Good morning. It is cold. It is 6:18 on this Thursday, December 19th, 2019. In fact, it's 15 degrees. It feels like 0 to 5 when the wind blows. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. You're listening to Radio Westchester, the new radio station at the train station. You can listen on radiowestchester.com, different website or rather podcast platforms. Ours is MyTuner You can watch and listen on Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, or YouTube. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Marrone. We're going to take just a quick look at the weather and the sky conditions. No rain today. That's good. The high's only going to be 27. It's 19 right now. We will be back, of course, with a full report on the weather brought to you by United Hebrew. Well, yesterday, no surprise to anyone, they have moved. That is, the Congress of the United States has moved to impeach President Trump on 2 charges. Although there's some question now as to when they will actually bring it to the Senate, the other house of Congress. Here in New Rochelle, an educator with a record of success, so says the school district, will lead a new curriculum department. We'll tell you about that. Hillary Clinton was around yesterday. She and Chelsea discussed her new book and the impeachment. An ex-Cold Spring teacher trustee is accused of trying to set up a teen sex meeting. And in Rockland, a special education teacher is convicted of abusing the child. Those stories and more all coming up. And yes, Garrett Cole made a nice impression yesterday coming to Yankee Stadium. You'd make a nice impression too if you just received $325 million, or the promise of same coming up over the next 9 years. Let's take a look at the weather, brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com, and yes, it's cold. It's cold in the studio. Even wore an insulated shirt today. It's warming up. It's not too frigid in here. But we are exposed on 4 of the 5 sides, so it'll take a while for the heat to do what it does. And I'm sure it's the same wherever you are. It is 19, right? It's 15 actually right now. It's going to get up to 27. That will be the high for the day. But total sunshine, you'll need sunglasses. And the wind, though, will be out of the northwest, 15 to 25. Overnight, it got up as high as 40. That is the gusts. For those of you driving somewhere and listening to us on your car radio or your cell phone or Bluetooth, you'll find gusts coming from the west to moving your car around a little bit. That's to be expected. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature will be 17 degrees. The wind out of the northwest, again, 5 to 15 miles an hour. Tomorrow, Friday, the temperature will get up to a balmy 30, and Saturday, partly sunny. The high will be 33, the overnight low 25, and this progressively warming weather is with us Sunday. Mostly sunny skies. A high will be 42 degrees. And we should get to those stories. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm going to show you another cover of the Post, they being blatantly partisan, but that's what we expect from them. Nonetheless, we use them as a source every day. Best sports on the planet. And, of course, they're not the only newspaper, right or left, to be stilted, but theirs is just, quite frankly, crass. I know you want to see the headline. You got to wait. The House of Representatives yesterday voted almost entirely along party lines to impeach President Trump following a rancorous day-long debate, making him just the 3rd president in U.S. history to suffer the congressional rebuke. The historic vote sets up a showdown in the GOP-led Senate, where Republicans have said there is virtually no chance Trump would be convicted and removed from office. The back-to-back votes came after 8 p.m. on 2 articles of impeachment, one for abuse of power and the other for obstruction of justice. The final count in votes on the full House, 230 to 197, with 1 member voting present. 2 Democrats, Jeff Van Drew, who's changing parties, and Colin Patterson of Minnesota, broke ranks. They come from Republican districts, and we don't even know what their convictions are, but at least the other gentleman's changing parties by keeping their jobs, more important probably. for them. Now, in a related story, and I need to look at this a little closely, the what we're seeing is that the Democrats are not bringing the bill to the floor right away. Nancy Pelosi is holding back, with many experts saying that that is a tactical ploy in the negotiation that takes place between the Congress, that is the House of Representatives, and the Senate over different rules and what kinds of witnesses can be called and so forth. And that gives them some bit of leverage because the longer she holds back, the longer the impeachment drags out. But then again, the Republicans may very well. The president has always seemed interested in getting more of a vindication, not just an acquittal. So we'll see where that goes. And just a note of commentary, it's a sad thing. I mean, other than the some people making light of it, people clapping over a president being impeached, the Post and now show you the headlines calling Pelosi the swamp mistress. I mean, just absurd, appealing to the worst in us. But that all that stuff aside, this is our country. It belongs to all of us. This is a sacred time, accusing a president of crimes that theoretically, I mean, it won't happen in this instance, but that theoretically could remove him from office, thus changing an election outcome. We should do so with great gravity and great consideration. So nothing really to make light of. Moving on now to local news. This came out yesterday in a press release. Not a lot of stories about it, but we saw the press release. Bob Cox, Talk of the Sound, did do a story about it. Dr. Alex Marrero, a school administrator, this is here in Rochelle, a school administrator with a record of helping to increase graduation rates and improve schools. Gee, I hope he did it without saying there are no more tests, everybody wins. Let's hope he does that. Was hired yesterday to be the City School District of New Rochelle's next assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. Currently, the assistant superintendent of secondary education in the East Ramapo Central School District. But that gives you pause to think. Dr. Marrero will begin his New Rochelle position on January 21, 2020. His appointment was approved by the New Rochelle Board of Education at a meeting in the high school. And this by Dr. Laura Fejo, the superintendent. She said, and we quote, Dr. Marrero will serve as an integral part of my cabinet and will help me fulfill my vision for excellence and access to a rigorous education for all students. His proven ability to analyze data and implement strategies to address gaps in equity and achievement will impact all students throughout the district. And this was a note, but again, this is the city's press release right now, or the school district, so unvetted by us. More recently, Dr. Marrero brought his formula for success to the East Ramapo schools when he joined the district in March 2018. His leadership has helped improve graduation rates and schools and targeted indicators under federal Every Student Succeeds Act accountability measures. So we shall see, but it sounds like a good move. Well, Hillary Clinton was up at Pace University promoting her new book, and this was all going on. She couldn't have picked a more historic day to be doing it as the House voted to impeach the president. And, well, she did have this to say. It's a story of abuse of power using the office of the president to further not the nation's objectives, but his own personal political objectives. So says, that's a quote, so said Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State. The facts are not at dispute. This is not a he said, she said. This is what happened. Again, though, whether it rises to the level of removing him from office, well, it gets to be decided. And based on what the Senate says they will do, it hasn't arisen to that. Remember, we've been talking about this for 2 weeks now. An impeachable offense is what the Senate at any given time says it is. And yes, there's no strict law governing that, folks, so that is that. A Cold Spring man who has served as a village, or has served, I should say, as a village board member and substitute teacher, has been accused of trying to meet a teenager for sex. This in Lohud today. One Charles Hustis III, a 36-year-old who ran for mayor, actually this year, was arrested on Monday on a federal charge of attempted enticement of a minor. Hustis is accused of using Facebook Messenger to communicate with a 16-year-old boy between December 8 and December 16. Hustis had taught the boy as a substitute teacher, this according to the federal complaint. Huster sent the boy sexual images, including photographs of himself, and tried to set up a meeting. Husty said in his message that he and the boy would meet, then go to his apartment for, well, sexual activity, according to the complaint. The FBI arrested him outside Food Town on Monday. He appeared in White Plains Federal Court on Monday and was released. He declined to comment when reached by telephone. It is 6:29. Wow. Oh, these stories, we have to do them. It's in the news. This out of Rockland County and News 12 today. A special education teacher there has been convicted of abusing a child. Officials say Yesenia Vasquez was a teacher at Stony Point Elementary School when she used her foot to lift up a disabled 5-year-old's head and pulled her hair several times. Vasquez was also previously convicted of harassing another student. She faces up to a year behind bars when she is sentenced in February. Did I say bars? Did I sound like I come from Boston, or my Brooklyn accent sneaking in there? 6:30 on the Smacker. A manhunt is underway in Orange County for a man who was accused of murder for a second time. This in News 12. Jamad Murphy is one of Orange County's most wanted. This, according to District Attorney Dave Javier, says Murphy has been on the run since fatally shooting a 23-year-old, one Matthew Napoleone, in November outside the Made in Puerto Rico Latin Cuisine Sports Bar. Well, that's a long title for a bar. That in Wallkill. A grand jury indicted Murphy Wednesday of murder. It's not the first time the 26-year-old is accused of deadly violence. In 2015, he was charged with a fatal shooting of a 16-year-old on Mother's Day weekend, but a jury acquitted Murphy earlier this year. He was set free. This time, a $2,500 award is being offered for any information. Speaking of measles, this never goes away. Vaccine, this issue never goes away. By the way, in New Jersey, just by way of knowing this, right now their Senate chickened out. Brack, 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 brack. We have to say that about you down there. They voted, or that is the Congress there, their I should say their assembly, voted to do away with the exemption for religious reasons. And hundreds of people went down to Trenton protesting, you can't do this, God says, God says, God says. And the Senate there, chickened out. It's remarkable, really, that they would allow that, but they would allow kids for religious reasons to endanger other people. That's where we all need to draw the line. Now, that was commentary. Now, back to the facts as they relate to Rockland. A Rockland County family claims that New York's health commissioner hyped up a recent measles outbreak to establish, quote, an unprecedented medical policy by fiat that usurped their doctor's authority and their two children's rights. Now, we should listen to doctors, though. The family has filed a court action against Health Commissioner Howard Zucker and the New York State Department of Health. The claim focuses on the Health Department's August 16th emergency regulations regarding updates to New York's vaccine exemption policy. The amendment mandated the use of specific forms to claim a medical exemption for a child's vaccination. The family doctor, a New York State licensed physician, has provided requests for medical vaccine exceptions for two children, according to their attorney, but the children's school rejected the exemption requests, citing the health department's regulations. And the doctor's saying that the health department's taking over medical decisions, but there's no indication at what those medical concerns might be, because our understanding here of the law is that it's about religious exemption, not medical ones. In June, Governor Cuomo signed a new vaccine exemption law that applied to all New York schools, public or private. Now, the legislation, once again, passed amid the outbreak in the Orthodox Jewish communities of Rockland and Brooklyn, axed religious exemptions. Only medical exemptions could be used. So medical exemptions are there. So one wonders if they're trying to use some sort of a trumped-up medical exemption to mask a religious one. In New Jersey, they're quite upfront about it, and they're wrong. And that's not even arguable. When you endanger other people, you're wrong, regardless of what your supernatural being or some book written by a person about that supernatural being had to say. All right, the Governor Cuomo Bridge. I was so glad to see this story, and many of you who travel, particularly west at certain times, but even if you travel east on the Mario Cuomo Bridge. And boy, oh boy, so Joseph Spector and Thomas Z. Zambito, the New York State team at Low HUD, thank you. Build it and the traffic will come. That's how they opened their piece. About 108,000 more cars and trucks passed over the new Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge in September than did when the bridge first opened. And if you're continuing to notice more trucks on the new bridge, you're not seeing things. Truck traffic continues to soar, up 13% year over year. Records from the State Thruway Authority showed. So while the new bridge is a smooth ride with 4 lanes over 2 spans and offers a majestic view of the Hudson River, the fact is it's attracted more traffic. Excuse me. And things are just as slow as ever. Classic tickle in the throat out of the blue. I think I'm allergic to traffic. Now, in December 2014, nearly 2.1 million cars and trucks went over the 3-mile bridge. This past September, it went over 2.4 million. Bottom line, it looks great, but has it alleviated traffic? No. When you drive west at a certain time in the evening, which is where my experience comes from, because if I'm ever going that way over the Hudson River, I'm usually doing it at incredible hours. But if I happen to be going that way, it's usually at night, and in those rare occasions that I go that way or do so at all, the Tappan Zee, or rather the road to the Tappan Zee, 287 West, is just as bad as it used to be. It is 6:35. Now, here's an interesting twist. This is state politics now, not national politics. For years, Republicans maintained their grip on the New York State Senate, hanging on to their last bastion of power in this very blue state. This, according to a story in Low HUD today. They ceded control to Democrats at the start of this year. Then came the exodus, so says the story. As of Wednesday, 8 of the 23 current Senate Republicans have declined to run for re-election or are seeking another office in 2020. The next year, their seats are on the ballot. The rash of Republican retirements has made the already difficult task of retaining or regaining the Senate majority, it seems, now gargantuan. And this began with the abrupt resignation of Senator Kathy Young of Olean, New York, and in March, Republicans were able to retain the seat in a special election in November, however. But nonetheless, the move continues, and it's troubling in what is already becoming, it already is a one-party county here in Westchester, but it's not healthy to see a one-party state. But that is where we're headed. And this story was so interesting yesterday that we absolutely need to put it in with the news. And that is Garrett Cole stunned the Yankees Wednesday when he revealed that he had saved a poster he held up as an 11-year-old. And I want to show you the back. I've already showed you the front of the post, but they are the best sports paper on the planet. And he had this since he was a kid. And it says, Yankee fan today, tomorrow, and forever, saying all the right things. And look, for $325 million, I would say the right things. And that's not to be cynical about it. He seemed perfectly sincere. It was really a nice press conference. And he said it was ultimately his dream to play for the Yankees, and he expects that this decision will bring them multiple championships. Now, an interesting thing for those of you who are Giant fans, the former coach Tom Coughlin was fired yesterday, his third year as the vice president of football operations for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, we don't know enough to say that it's him, okay, but 25% of the complaints made by the Players Union, 25% of all complaints made by the Football Players Union were made about how players are treated there. Now, we don't know if it's him, the owner who just fired him, the coach, or whatever, but no one wants to play in Jacksonville. And speaking of Giant fans, it looks like Daniel Jones will return, moves Eli back to the bench. So, barring anything unforeseen, you won't see, remember in The Godfather when he said, oh, no, you won't see him no more, talking about Carlo, who was shot by the weeds over here in New Jersey, if you know where it was done. that is where it was filmed. You won't see Eli no more. That's how it looks. And Daniel returns to underneath the center for the Giants. It is 6:38. As we move on, guess who won 2 games now in a row? The Devils, after trading their very best player. But again, just like when the Knicks got rid of Porzingis, you can tell when someone's not happy. You can tell when someone wants to be somewhere else. And that certainly has been the case with Taylor Hall. Not that you all care much about hockey, but they got 5 different players for him, all young and all prospects. We'll see how that goes. So, lots of stuff going on in sports, but nothing that we're really going to get into right now. One of the stories that I wanted to mention before we go back to some other national news, this issue of the facade that broke down and that killed this young, 60, it's young if you're 69, that killed this young architect, the 60-year-old architect. They say that there are some 1,200 buildings. That's a lot of buildings with similar kinds of problems. Indeed, today, because of the ice, and yesterday the ice that was melting or semi-melting was creating a secondary problem, and some streets in Manhattan were closed. But the whole point is they need to start taking a harder look at these buildings. It's a dangerous place, that is Manhattan, when it's cold like this. Okay, let's take a look at where we are. It is 6:40. Welcome to Radio Westchester, Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. Coming up today, we're going to talk with Vince. We're going to have some open phones today with Vince Russo. John Bailey's in the house today from White Plains. Andy Spano. And again, we'll try to get your reaction to the impeachment and where you think it will go. And I'm not interested in being mean-spirited for or against, but I am interested in how you feel about it, what you think will happen. This is a very, very important thing, folks. It's not something to be made fun of. It's not something to be, even if you think the president is guilty, it's not something you want to spike the ball about. This is troubling when this happens, and it's only the 3rd time in the history of our country, and unfortunately twice, unless you were born after the Clinton presidency, twice in our lifetime. So let's take a break right now. It is 6:41. It remains 15 degrees. By the way, the thermometer thing that I look at is up there. That's why you see me twist my head. I have to move it. It's 15 degrees, and we will now take a closer look at the weather. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. No chance of rain or snow or precip or one of those little crazy flurries that came about yesterday. We'll get up to 27, though. Sunshine through high, thin clouds, 26, 27 will be the average temperature. Still a bit windy, gusts up to 25. Overnight, they were as high as 40, 38 officially, but if you were out and about in it this morning, you know it was worse than that. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature will get down to 17. The wind out of the northwest, but it'll go easier, 5 to 15. Tomorrow, sunny. The temperature will be 30 degrees. The wind out of the northwest, 5 to 10. And Saturday, partly sunny, a high of 33. And warming up at night, only getting down to 25. I know you want the rest of the weekend, so sunny on Sunday, mostly sunny, a high 42. It'll get up above freezing comfortably, so the overnight low 29. And the weather this morning was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the bottom of the hour into the top of the hour has been brought to you this morning by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality, and also by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And Boy, here's one. You've got to be careful of black ice this time of year. And yesterday, in Central Park, this happened. A doctor riding his bike, or he skidded, riding a bike, and wound up being killed by a school bus. You really got to look out for that dry ice, folks. And I'm telling, especially of dry ice, black ice, if you are driving in the middle of the night. Anyway, speaking of which, this happened yesterday, early evening, but it was dark out. If you come up the Cross County, when you go through Yonkers and you come up that stretch, after you get off, I guess it's the Sawmill. Does anyone know, and I should have asked Elpham Hushler this yesterday, and I'm going to put it to Hezi Harris. I might even call him this morning at 8:20, try and get him on. Why are all the lights in Yonkers and Mount Vernon, mostly Yonkers though, they're off? And that's a narrow road. It's a twisting road. It's rather dangerous that there are no lights on that roadway. Now, of course, if you're driving upstate to Buffalo or Syracuse or Albany, there never are any lights. I get that. But this is there's just something terribly wrong. So if you know anything about that, give us a shout at 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. We're going to take a quick break and open up the phones. All are welcome. How do you feel about the impeachment? Where do you think we go from here? Where do you think? How do you think the election's going? You know, tonight the Democrats will have yet another debate. They're down to 7 people, although they're taking some heat now from their own party. The absolute problem in this country is the extremes on both sides, that some of the people of color dropped out. Well, folks, it works like this. If you have a fair practice, and we're going to assume that we do, after you have that fair practice and people either get the votes or they don't, they get the money or they don't, they get the traction in the media or they don't, and that's how we roll. You know, that's how we got Barack Obama, a person of color, someone that I supported pretty openly. But if the cookie crumbles and there isn't a person of color or a female at the end of the day, well, then there's not. And while we can rue it, and while we can say, how do we make the world more inclusive, at the end of the day, it is what it is. All righty, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more news and your calls. 914-222-3141. All righty, welcome back. It is 6:47. We do have a call and an item that we noted today in the newspapers, and we want to talk about it just a little later, about a young man who's 10. And they say his IQ test was so perfectly done that he's smarter than Einstein, Stephen Hawking combined. But we'll talk about later. Let's go to the telephone and see who is with us. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning there, Bob. How are you?
Thomas, I hope you're not, before we go on to politics, I hope you're not too disappointed in your Islanders. You're allowed to lose a game once in a while and get a spanking. You were upset the other day. I felt for you.
God. 8 goals. I don't mind losing 4-2, 4-1, but 8-3?
You would do. You got a great team and a great coach. So what's on your mind this morning? And thank you for calling.
That's like 4 games of goal scoring against. Mm-hmm. I mean, we average the team average is giving up 2.13 goals per game. They gave up 8.
I think you still have. I can check it here. I think you still have the best goals against average, though. I'm almost certain that you do. No one comes.
I think we do. I think we do.
Just extraordinary stuff. Garrett Cole. Anyway, go ahead. What's on your mind? It's your time.
I'm really upset upon the death of that architect being hit by falling tiles, right?
Horrible. How does this happen? You're a real estate guy, if you don't mind my telling the public that. And they got a fine for $1,200. They paid it and didn't do anything. How does this work, Tom? And as a person in that business, say more about that.
Well, I don't know how it works, but I can tell you it doesn't work. When this happens, there's like one of two remedies. One is that the city comes along and does a repair and then bills the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is the property owner is responsible. When was their fine? Back in March or April?
Yeah, something like that. I think April or May, yeah.
The family of the poor woman who's deceased should sue that property owner for their building, their bank account, their cars, everything. And I feel that property owner should spend serious time in jail. The building should be repossessed by the city. You know, that process where you take back property.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think it should be extremely punitive because they were notified of a problem that caused the death of a human being.
You know what I wonder about, Tom? Is because I know even here, we have got some pretty good building inspectors. The guy that runs that department here in New Rochelle is really very highly rated. But then I'm sure he can't get to every building in a small city like this. I'm sure he has to look the other way because of, if I may, the fact that we're a sanctuary city. Because we all know, anyone that lives anywhere in New Rochelle knows there are lots and lots and lots of illegal apartments and buildings. And that's small fry stuff. So what does a city do? And I'm saying this rhetorically, but maybe you can comment on it. What does a city do that has thousands of some of the biggest buildings in the world? How do they police that?
Well, you have to go back to the basics, I think, and that is that you have employees working for a big city who have a job, and some of these employees are not on the ball. They're not doing their job properly. And even if they wanted to, I think there's limitations that are set upon them by the city that prevents them from doing things that maybe they would want to do. I mean, if it were you, Bob Marrone, who issued the violation on that property owner back in March or April, and you woke up 2 days ago or 1 day ago and you found out that the building you issued the violation on, the problem was never resolved, and it resulted in the death of a human being, how would you feel?
Well, that's an individual thing. We're going to assume, because I don't want to be patting myself on the back, so this is an assumption, that I really care. When I was an executive, I did, that I really give a hoot. One of the problems with organizations is, for example, in working on this story, I've been doing a little scratching of the surface of people who do inspections for a living. And they get a lot of pressure from their bosses. So I don't care how well, I don't care what you had to write up. You got to get it done in X number of hours. That's that. I don't care. And so what an incompetent executive like that is doing, he's really winking at you and saying, I don't care if you smudge it. We got to get numbers. It goes back to an old axe of mine. One of the most neglected things not done well in this country anymore is middle management. Everybody just wants to go along to get along. And it's an organizational problem. But to answer your question, yeah, I would go after that, but I would probably get a lot of heat. You have to see.
I also think the city of New York is responsible.
Of course they are.
That person.
Of course they are. When's the last time in a city that you worked with a city agency in New York that you walked away feeling good about it?
Well, I don't have much interaction with the city.
No, but
if
you did, did you ever have to deal with their motor vehicles? Did you ever have to deal with their housing authority? Did you ever have to deal with them regarding taxes?
Yeah. Of course I have. Obviously.
God help you. Did you ever have to go in one of their courts? God help you.
Speaking of motor vehicles, I am so opposed to issuing driver's licenses to illegals.
I was thinking about that
And
today.
I know the
Tell me what.
argument. I know the argument is, well, that's for the protection of the people who are, who run into car accidents with drivers that are unlicensed. But really, people are here illegally, correct?
Yes, I understand. Go ahead.
And a driver's license, to me, is something that you should be receiving if you're a legal resident, a legal citizen. It shouldn't be something given to you. You know what? Since you're here and you're not supposed to be here, well, you know what? We're going to give it to you anyway. It's just, Bob, I'm so upset over what's happening in America. Last night I'm watching the president give a rally, and I watched for about 2 hours, okay? And I saw a man that I'm saying to my wife, I can't believe he's acting the way he is on the day or on the very minute he's being impeached. He's giving a rally. He's talking about the great things that he's done for the country. He's actually in good spirits, and he's being impeached. Then I turn on CNN, and the first words out of the mouth of Wolf Blitzer is, "The president is angry." I just watched 2 hours of a rally where the President Trump was anything but angry.
It's both ways. It's everywhere, and that's why I started the show today. That people shouldn't be spiking the ball, and then I pick up the papers too, even though I have all the apps. Apps are so overrated when it comes to the news. That's why young people are being led this way and that way, because the problem with online apps is they do much more editorial than the way they present the news. You don't see the whole thing. But anyway, look at what the Post did. If you're looking at me, Tom, they're calling Pelosi, and you may not like her, they're calling her the swamp mistress on the front page of a newspaper. This thing has to be treated with a certain amount of sacredness. Now, she wore black, and one of the reasons she obviously wore black is she knew it wasn't a gay movement, whether you support her or not. What I'm saying is that's what the country's evolved to. And to your point, one of the things that where President Trump needs to be given credit is when it comes to this issue of immigration. The Democrats and the Republicans have had 30 years since Ronald Reagan tried, and even he failed, one of our better presidents, even he failed to deal with it because he couldn't get the House and the two bodies in the legislature to do something about it. So he tries to do something about it. And then an American like you who busts his ass to make a living and to do things legally sees people who are here legally get licenses. It drives what the Democrats never get is how insane this drives people. Do you understand where I'm going? How insane it's, or like, as you know, my soapbox now for 2 years since this Valerie Schwab thing woke me up. The absolute virus that is the philosophy of New York City schools that tried to infect New Rochelle and still is not under control.
Well, it's even, I drive around New Rochelle, and there's these signs that say "No fail."
Yeah.
and next to those signs on the same very lawn, it said "Hate doesn't live here."
Yeah, I know. Go. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's absolutely correct. I still don't know why they don't want Feo, other than the fact that she sued for her own personal right, which she had a right to do.
Yeah, and this is the party of inclusivity, right?
Well, see, that's the problem. I try not to lump all the parties together because there are moderates on both sides, but those tend to be the extremes. But yes, I understand.
But,
now, just one more comment for you I wanted you to say more, and here I am motor mouthing. But I hang my hat over in the West End, right? And what I know, and this is just a practical issue. You got people making turns from the wrong lane. You got people who drive tentatively. You have people that don't signal. And the areas, there's a lot of people living there who are probably undocumented or illegal, depending on your preference for choice. And it's very obvious to me that they don't have licenses. And I say to myself, well, I hope they have insurance. And then I say to myself, I wonder if I really do, and this is a terrible thing to say, but I have to say it because it's an honest feeling. I said, I wonder what police do when they stop them, because even our mayor, who I otherwise like, and the policies here in Westchester are, about being a sanctuary city. I wonder if that means that they don't do anything about it, because once they start a process, they open up a can of worms. Similarly, is that why we don't inspect all these buildings that have illegal apartments? And so what you have is allowing something illegal to continue that doesn't have a solution begets more illegality. I don't know the answer.
You know, Bob, 2 years ago, I was hit head on. Gratefully, I was going maybe 15 miles an hour, and the other car was going about 20, okay? So call the police department, and the police department does not come, and I used to, if you got into an accident, they would sketch out what car was where,
Sure.
who was turning which way, car one, car two. The police officer responding said to me, was anybody injured? Answer, no. He looked around, and he saw that there was no damage to anything other than the vehicle. So it wasn't no damage to public property.
Call your insurance company. That's probably what he said.
Right, but here's the point. There was no report drawn up other than car A and car B hit each other, and these are the names of the people, and here is their insurance. Other than that, there was no sketching or anything like that. And I was told that the reason why that didn't happen is, one, because neither of us was injured, and two, there was no damage to New Rochelle property.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, is the reason for that they don't want to get involved too deeply with who was driving the car and whether they belong here or not?
That probably is one of the reasons. Sure, that, and they don't want to be bothered. That whole business, too, of the way insurance works is bogus. Everything wants to be cookie cutter. No one really wants to get into the details. But, yeah, did he check your license and registration? Did he check the other person's license and registration or no?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And if they had no license, do you think he would have written them up is the question. I don't know.
Well, who knows?
But, one of the things
Bob,
that go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I didn't want to get off the topic, but I kind of do. I want to get back to the impeachment.
Yes, sir.
All right. And I want to ask you a question.
Sure,
straightforward, honest question.
You will.
About the president. Okay. What kind of job do you think he's doing? And break it down for me.
You got to give me your criteria. I think, okay. I think that,
yeah.
okay. Okay. I'm going to give you a very honest answer.
I'm going to give you my criteria.
Okay, go ahead.
Here is the title of the category. You break it down.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, domestically, specifically the economy. Number two, internationally, specifically security of our nation against foreign attack.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay. Locally, he's done a nice job with the economy. I think, though, that his tax cut has hurt some people as well. But in general, I think he's done a nice job with the economy. I think he's
May I interrupt you? Where did the tax cuts hurt people? How? You're going to bring it up. I know. Go ahead.
Well, because of
How did it hurt people?
Well, it's hurt a number of people here in this region because of what they can't what they can't write off and things like that.
Ding, 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 ding. And why is that? Because taxes locally.
No, I
high.
understand, but you asked for my opinion. You don't retort
Okay.
yet. But I think that it's done okay. But also, we have another $1 trillion on the deficit. But yes, I think he's done a nice job with that. I don't agree with you on but I also think he's been very divisive, and that rather than, and it is part of a president's job, and that for the sake of politics, he's deliberately driven a wedge between people. But that's politics. Internationally, I don't agree with you. It's something that I spend a great deal of my time on. However, it's his right to do it, and that people forget that it's his right to drive foreign policy. But I think the Trans-Pacific Partnership, while I applaud what he's tried to do with China, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was one way to keep them in check in the region, and I think he doesn't do his homework. But I think that's all separate from some of the other stuff. I think that he has his contempt for the press, his contempt for judges, his contempt for Congress is a very unhealthy thing. And I think, yes, and I don't care what a good job he's done otherwise. I think that he is antithetical to the American system. Now, if he wants to change it, that's a different thing. But you're asking my opinion.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that. And you said a lot of things. I wasn't taking notes, but
no, you can react. You can do. It's prima facie.
He did a nice job. A nice job. We have the best economy, probably. The Roaring 20s. 1920s. Great time for the country of America. A lot of prosperity.
I don't care.
You know, we're going into a new roaring 20s, the 2020s. If he is given 4 more years, I think we're going to have a prosperous economy for the next 4 or 5 years, decades.
He may get 4 more years, and
feel,
thank God for checks and balances. Hopefully they'll keep him from ruining democracy as we know it. That's my concern.
He's far from ruining democracy. The reason why we're divisive is because they've been trying to nullify an election since the day he was inaugurated.
I'm sure there are people who've been doing that, but when the president of the United States, I want to take you back to some of your own early commentary about the way we've become as a country. He exemplifies that. He lied from the moment of talking about people on the mall. He lied about denying that the Russians hacked the election. He raised questions. He called, even though we now know that there were some bad practices done and they need to be looked into. He, instead of saying, look, a lot of this is politically driven, when you'll see blah, 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 he called it a hoax and a witch hunt. If a judge said something he didn't like, he said, well, he's a Mexican, of course,
Do you think Obama was lying when he said in 2016 that, come on, there's no way the Russians can rig an election here in the States? Do you think he was lying?
I don't think
he said that.
Well, no, I think he was wrong. But you see,
President
I don't
Obama
think. Here's
that.
the point, Thomas. I don't think it doesn't matter if they rig the election. Where I've been very consistent is when Obama ignored, and he thought he was being so cool by saying, I'm not going to get into it. When he ignored the Russians hacking the election, when that first came out, even before President Trump was elected, Obama was, I called him a quisling. That's a pretty horrible thing to call I haven't even called, one thing I'll never call this president is a quisling. He's not afraid of anything. And so, I hear you, but there's something I think you're missing. And for example, yes, the economy's doing well, but when Barack Obama, and I remember because I was covering the news when he won, when he became president out of one of the worst presidencies we've ever had. Now, from the standpoint of being a better person, George Bush is, but Trump's a better president. But the economy was in such a bad state. The stock market was like at 6,000. And when it got all the way to the 20s, I was very slow to say, oh, look what Obama's done with the economy, because there are a lot of factors. But he was ridiculed. It's not him. It was the economy. It was the full moon. There is this tendency on all sides not to give presidents credit if they're not in his party. So, yes, do I think he's done a decent job? Yeah, I do. I think that he's attacked things that people cared about, like China, like immigration. He gets points for that. But here's what I'm afraid of. Here's what I'm afraid of.
Are we at? Are we in war now? Are we fighting any country?
No, and I also agree with him wanting to pull troops out. But that doesn't matter.
Peacetime.
No, but it doesn't matter, Tom.
Tom,
do you know the very best period, other than now, after we rebuilt Germany, the very best period in German history was between 1935 and 1940, when Hitler put his country back. And I'm only using him. I'm not comparing him to Hitler. Being good at the job in a democracy, while it's important, it's not the only thing. In a democracy, you've got checks and balances. And if every time the check and balance applies to you and you don't like it, you ridicule it, you call the press the enemy of the people, you call the Democrats the enemy of the people, you call judges you don't agree with the enemy of people, and you attack, even though they may have been less competent than anyone thought, you attack the intelligence services that you otherwise then rely on to justify other things because you don't like what they said. You are attacking the very flag that you pled to uphold.
Hey, Bob, you held up the newspaper with a headline that you despise.
Swamp Mistress. Yeah,
Who wrote that?
What?
Who wrote that? Who wrote that?
Swamp Mistress? The New York Post.
Who wrote? But what is that called? The media, right?
Yes.
Oh, my God, Bob Marrone attacked the media. He held up the New York Post.
No, I'm not attacking the media. No, I'm not attacking the media in general. I'm attacking the way the Post wrote their headline. They're very specific things. Yes, the media does awful stuff, but in general, and all the presidents. No one likes the media in general. Bob Cox is one of the most loathed people in this city because he holds the city accountable, and people attack him. I get it, but this president is antithetical to everything that the flag is. You continue to say you don't like the press. I mean, do you realize how dangerous this all is and what he does? But that's my opinion. Again, I one of the reasons I wanted to go on my own is I was doing local radio and I loved it before. And one of the rare times I got in trouble, and I wasn't getting in trouble for the position that I took. I must always say that my old bosses at WVOX never told me what to say. But I did get in trouble for a speech I once gave about, and not in trouble, didn't tell me not to say it, it's just that it wasn't appropriate in a local radio station. See, I don't want 10 years from now, when people look back on this, not from the standpoint of success. I'm not talking about how well a job he might do. When people look back on his presidency, I don't want to be one of those people that went along to go along. I just didn't want to. I find him antithetical to the principles of this country. Now, having said that, and this is something I actually lose sleep over, in my heart of hearts, I know that the best form of government in the short term is someone who's decisive, someone who's strong, and someone who, though, is benevolent, which he is not, but still, benevolent despot's the best. But then you're stuck with a king or a queen. What happens when they die? So what we have...
Here's a hypothetical.
No, but what we have here in America... No, I'm not going anywhere. Just hear me out. What we have here in America is a system that's sloppy and ugly by design. And the president doesn't like that, and the people that support the president like. He made a decision. He's doing this. He's doing that. He rushes stuff through, and as one of his former chief of staff people said, if he continues to do stuff like that, he's going to wind up getting impeached. He's got to play by the rules. That's all. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom.
Here's a hypothetical. Let's say there was an election for president, and the candidates were George W. Bush and Donald J. Trump. Who do you think you would vote for, and who do you think would do a better job?
Okay, I think it depends on how you define it again. I would vote for George Bush, even though he was not as effective, because I think the democracy has to stand even when it does bad things. I was hit with that about Pence. And my answer is I'd rather have a president do 10 things I disagreed with than one I agreed with, but that he jury-rigged. But that's just me. I'm very old-fashioned because I'm as a political science major. I love history. It's certainly not the most practical way to view the world, but that's what I've always loved about America. America is very flexible.
Now, I know you understand the Electoral College process, and I know you know...
Yes, I do.
I know you know that the states that put Trump over the top were Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And do you know that Hillary Clinton ignored those states?
Yeah.
Didn't go campaign
She
there.
deserved to lose.
President Trump went to campaign. Did Russia have anything to do with that?
You see, here's where I'm with the president. I think he would have beat her anyway. But his denying... See, the fact... And this is why I called Obama Quisling. And there's something that still doesn't add up about this president with Russia. Although even Harlan Ullman says he liked the idea of reapproachment that the president brought to Russia. I almost lost my train of thought, but you were saying
the campaign.
Oh yes. Let me just cover this. No, I had no problem with that. In fact, he won, and I've never said this. I've never challenged the legitimacy of his election at all. I think that he'd have won anyway because she didn't campaign in those states. I think that she had a hard time showing her humanity, and I think that the current president showed that he would do things about things people cared about. It has nothing to do with whether you agree with it. So yes, I don't think that they pushed him over the top. No, I don't think that the Russians did. But going all the way back to Obama, and this is just my own maybe flawed sense of justice, I consider what the Russians did an act of war. And I always have. And that's why I was so hard on Obama. And then when this president denied that it even happened, for reasons that I still can't get my head around, I was appalled. But he's our president.
Did he deny that they interfered, or did he deny that he caused them to interfere?
No, he didn't know. No collusion was proven. I think that they flirted with one another. But I don't think anybody at the
What's
end
the
of
answer to my question, Bob?
I'm sorry.
First
Yeah,
or
go
the
ahead.
second thing?
Well, I interpreted
Did
your question. That's why I answered it thus.
Did
Say
he
that again.
deny? Did he deny that Russia was involved in tampering, or did he deny that he caused Russia to
Oh
tamper?
no, he denied even that they tampered. In fact, he and Hannity and all the people that are not open-minded are trying to create this false narrative that it was the Ukraine. You know, that's like blaming that little pipsqueak instead
Is
of Harvey.
Hannity a member of the media?
Hannity is an opinion member of the media who lies knowing that there are people who believe that he is a journalist.
There you go. You just attacked the media.
He's not a newsman.
You
He's
did.
not a news
You
guy.
called him a liar.
He's not a news
You
guy.
said
Yes,
he's
he is. Yes, he is, and there are liars on the left too.
What is Christopher Cuomo? What is he
Chris
considered?
Cuomo is another opinion guy. He's
Okay.
another opinion guy. But you see, I watched Hannity grow up. I'm a radio person. I watched him and Rush Limbaugh ruin my profession. And I loved Rush Limbaugh. And Sean Hannity's one of the nicest people in radio, if you ever met him. But they have decided to make money rather than tell the truth. And I can't get my head around it. It's so sad. And, you know, do you really believe Hillary Clinton killed Vince Foster? I mean, come on. You know, to create those kinds of narratives, it worked. Radio became professional wrestling. And I've got encouraged to do that, you know, to be one-sided. I mean, I have my, you know, in fact, where I must look like a yo-yo is I've gone so far to the right on schools. I make Sean Hannity look like a liberal. I'm not so terribly far to the left, but this president bothers me because I love our system. And maybe our system doesn't work anymore. But what I interpret is that a lot of people who, because Trump has been successful at certain things, if that's all you care about, you miss the point of America. Because America was...
Your guy Harlan Ullman, he gets under my skin because he is constantly attacking our country.
He's not
We
attacking
can't
the
win
country.
wars.
No, he attacks the
know-
president, not the country.
Well, we can't win wars. We haven't won a war since when? World War II?
That's true.
What was
We haven't
when
won
we
any wars.
when we liberated Kuwait and we pushed Iraq back?
Oh, no, he talked about
Was
that.
that a
He
victory?
talks about that as the exception. But that's not a war we started. That was a reaction, and we were requested to go in. We reacted to something else. It wasn't a war that we initiated. That was his
So
point.
we started all these wars.
Yeah, we did.
We started
Mm-hmm.
all of them.
Yeah. No one told us to go into the second Kuwait. By the way, you know, let's get on the record. I supported that war. I thought if they had weapons of mass destruction,
We started the war in Korea.
no, we
started the
didn't
war in
start that
Korea.
war. No, we didn't start that war. He said, "Why America loses the wars it starts." We didn't start that war. The North Koreans won over I guess it's the 38th parallel. But then again, that's just a book that he wrote. I mean, the guy's an expert, but you can see he's not very kind to any of our presidents, except for the last three. He's considered them to be inadequate, which I kind of agree with. But look, we can go on and on about this. Well, all I'm saying is don't just judge a president by his record. It depends on what matter. You know, some people say it does. You know, I do. See, there are people who, without understanding it, and it's an interesting prospect, is they would prefer a president who is effective rather than a president who played by our rules. They're different things. But see, I think what keeps America, what sustains America, is the rules and the checks and balances. And I may be too faithful to that. And sometimes I misinterpret it. Sometimes I'm wrong. I think Anthony's one guy who must have been yelling and screaming about the FIFA warrants for 2 years. And I was dismissive of that, and I was wrong.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I get that.
And by the way, the guy that you don't like, Hannity. Well, you like him, but you dislike his.
I don't like what
his
he's
way
done to
doing
my
business.
profession. No. Yeah.
He was all over that Pfizer thing from the very
Yes,
beginning.
he was. Yes, he was. But you know what I have found, and both sides do it. I can pick up any newspaper, and I can find 1,000 things wrong that any person did. And what there's a tendency to do on both sides is we could be, you know, if we did this in the courts, it would be incredible. If we were about to hang a guy for murder, this is the way political discourse has evolved. Someone would say, yeah, but you know, when the judge was 15, he stole the newspaper. I'm like, okay, God, where do we go from here? Let's talk
Yeah.
about the case at hand. The president, we talk about Trump, and I get criticized for this. Why are you on Trump? Because he's the president right now. Why did I call Obama the Quisling? Because he was the president then.
Does it bother you that they've been trying to impeach him since before
Actually,
he was
yes.
elected?
Yeah,
That,
see
that
that.
you have a member of Congress, this Rashida Tlaib, who's on audio tape and videotape saying we're going to impeach the MFer
Yes.
the day that she was sworn in.
Yes,
Does that bother you?
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It bothered me too when
Do
Mitch
you think
McConnell.
they tried to
I'm
find
going
a
to do. I'm
reason
going to
to
do what my
impeach him?
colleagues do. It bothered me as well when Mitch McConnell said, and not as malevolently, on Inauguration Day when he was at some meeting with Republicans, I guess in Virginia, said it is my job to see that President Obama fails. I find both things reprehensible. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
do.
agree with that. I agree with that, but that's what politics is today.
No, I know, and I hate it.
Not just today. It was yesterday. It was the day before. It was a decade or 2 or 3 before. It may have been during the Washington, George Washington time. It may have been the same. I don't know. I wasn't around.
No, it was
But,
miserable then too. By the way, do you know what may surprise you? I felt very sad last night. I think, I have a different view. No one's ever really asked me to get into how I feel about this president. I have a lot of mixed feelings. You may be surprised at. I've interviewed him twice. He was wonderful to me. But I find that he's like this thing with the Ukraine. I'm sure when he did it, you can't on one hand. I'm critical of him because he doesn't do his homework and he's never been in politics before. And I find he does these things probably assuming, this is what everybody does. This is politics. I find him to be naive more than I find him to be malevolent, if you will. And I actually feel bad for that. There's no school for presidents. And I feel bad that here's a guy who looked at the things that people were upset about. Because I worked for Don Regan, who used to work for President Nixon. And chief executives, people who run their own companies, get stuff done because they don't abide bullspit. And our political system, unfortunately, is full of bullspit. So I actually felt bad, and I feel bad for him. And I've always asked myself, and you hear me ask this to pundits all the time, why doesn't he get a James Baker? Why doesn't he once in a while apologize, or once in a while bring in someone from the other side and say, hey, and show some warmth? Because I'm sure he's got that. I'm sure that that's in him, but he feels the need to be combative. So yeah, I honestly feel bad because I think that he could have done something for this country, and he's done some stuff. I mean, God bless him. You started out this conversation. We were talking about we're giving illegal immigrants licenses. They get jobs, they get benefits, they get this, they get that. And a guy like you is out busting his butt trying to build a real estate company. I'm trying to build a radio station. I mean, I want some of these breaks. I need food stamps.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you
And
should,
Bob,
I felt
if Joe
bad.
Biden becomes a president, Bob,
Yes, sir.
if Joe Biden becomes president and if the Republicans are in the majority in the House of Representatives, he will get impeached.
I hope not. You and I have often gotten the sticks up, that's a hockey term, as you know, over Benghazi. But what I find is that now both sides are getting even rather getting the job done. We go all the way back. Whitewater went on forever and then had nothing to do with Whitewater at the end. They got Clinton, and rightfully so, but nonetheless, they kept investigating him until they got Whitewater. And
well,
then,
let's tie a bow on this and wrap it all up, right?
yeah, let's do that.
I had the second part of my thought, but not the first part.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me finish my thought. Maybe it will prime. And then
Okay.
there was, the Democrats said, oh boy, wait till we get in power. We're going to torture your president. And then Obama comes in and they tortured him over Benghazi. And now this president comes in and they torture. And that's just one thing you were right about. I mean, right now, if he gets a case of the flu, they blame him for bringing the germs. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to stop that. I mean, let the guy
Yeah.
do his job. That's why I think Barr goes over the top. But I just hope that Barr would do the same if we had a Democratic president. See, the problem is we become so polarized. I don't know.
Well, Bob, you brought up Benghazi, and it came back to me. You brought up Benghazi, and I was talking about the 60-year-old female architect that was killed, right?
Yes, sir.
that building owner had plenty of notice to take care of a potential problem. Never acted, and it killed a lady.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton had plenty of notice from Christopher Stevens about the lack of security there in Libya,
Mm-hmm.
and Hillary Clinton took no action, and it cost us 4 Americans, including an ambassador.
Well, you know what?
There you go.
Her office didn't take the action I thought they should have, and I know there's a lot of mixed stuff, and I don't want to get into the merits of that because I'd have to restudy it again. But what I do know is after, and very similar to what Democrats do, this isn't isolated. After $27 million and 2 years of investigations, there was not one indictment, not one, nothing. And the Republicans had the House and the Senate. So what does that tell you? I'm just saying, look, I think where we need to be kinder to this president, where I think we were unkind to Hillary Clinton, people tried to make out what happened with Benghazi to be, some sort of malevolent, I want these people to die. I always go back to what Napoleon said, you're much smarter attributing stuff to incompetence, either of the person in the system than malevolence. And I think we turn it into malevolence all the time. Just like now with the president. I don't think he did this thing, which is why I wouldn't remove him from office over it. I don't think he did what he did with Ukraine. He probably just thought he was playing politics. He needs
you break it all down. It came down to that phone call.
Yes, it did.
And you put 10 people in a room, 5 on one side, 5 on the other, and you get 5 people saying one thing and 5 people saying another. Same phone call, same ears going into your hearing system, and you wind up with a different result.
That's true. However, I do believe after what I've read that he did it, but I would remove him from office over it. Listen, I got to take another call. Tom, thank you very much for inquiring of me. All right, let's go to the next one as we continue here. Vince is on. Vince, we're going to talk with you in a second. I just want to do the weather. And never get a chance to explain myself, so not that it matters too much, but Tom gave me that opportunity, and I appreciate that very much. It is 7:25. Let's take a good look at the weather. It's 15 degrees, and it's bleeping cold. Going to get up to 27 today. Sunshine through high, thin clouds, but lots of sunshine. Tonight, clear skies, 17 degrees, cold again. Tomorrow, sunny, the temperature 30, the wind out of the northwest 5 to 10. Saturday, partly sunny, the high will be 33 degrees. And as we look straight ahead, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle is supporting the bottom of the hour. So too Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And the weather was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Vince, you're on the air. We're running late, and that was my fault. What's going on?
Good morning, Bob. Well, not too much. I guess the talk is about the impeachment, which people who support Trump are going to believe that he's wrongfully impeached. People who don't support him feel that it was justified. It's going to go to the Senate. They're going to not convict him, and that's going to be it. So I don't know. I just want this whole thing to be over with because it's not being taken seriously by anybody. I don't think in Congress. I think they're just going through the motions, and
you know what? In many ways, your reaction, please. I think while I would not remove him from office, I didn't get that far in my conversation with Thomas. I thought it was appropriate to impeach him. I did think, though, that they should have impeached him on all the issues, including parts of the Mueller report. And I'm perfectly fine with it if they feel he shouldn't be removed from office, because the founding fathers said that is a fluid thing. It's what you think it is. But beyond that, I find that this is one more extension of how cynical the world's become. People do what works, not what's right. And that was the essence of my conversation with Tom. Either we have principles or we don't. Either we have them, because America's about the principles, and the country's lost that. And we've lost that in work, we've lost that in politics, we've lost that in finance, and we've lost that in our work careers. That's why radio got corrupted. Radio got corrupted because you make more money when you incite.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can, go on and disagree with a lot of points that the previous caller made about Trump and his performance and such like that. But you know what? It is what it is, and we'll get through this guy as we've gotten through other presidents who were not particularly good.
I'm not so sure.
Well,
see, that's why I told Tom my concerns are less about what he may have done well or had good intentions about, and more about his attacks on the institutions. Because it has worked. I mean, Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and Fox News have managed to do something, is create a whole alternate universe.
Yeah, they have, and that's right. And it's spread to both
yes,
both sides.
the other side just isn't as good at it.
I mean, actually that's true, and it's surprising how they don't have it. Because,
well, here's the difference. What I find is the liberals try to use facts and then interpret them weirdly, the extreme liberals in radio and TV, and then interpret them their own way. The far right webs like Daily Caller and places like that, Breitbart, they create their own facts. It's a little bit different. Choose your weapon,
Yeah.
The sun, it's true the sun is round, but the heat can be interpreted as a blah, 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 and the Sean Hannitys will say, "What son?" So I don't know where to go with it. It's just both sides need their heads pushed together and banged. But you know what? Extremes work, my friend. I did want to ask you a little bit, since you are in government, and Tom talked about it a little. Why is it that inspectors in general, inspectors of buildings, inspectors of health, inspectors of the buildings, certainly in New York City, where there are now 1,200 that are dangerous. Why is that such a tough business? Why is it so difficult?
Well, I think part of it in New York City is just sheer numbers. You've got just a very small amount of inspectors who have to inspect large numbers of properties, so it's tough for them to get to each one. The other thing is that it's a profession that's kind of been known to be, I don't want to say corrupt, but
go ahead and go there. It is corrupt. It is corrupt. I don't think there's a city on earth that hasn't had an inspector go to jail for taking bribes.
Yeah, I mean it's always.
It really.
I had a situation when I lived in Brooklyn where I was just changing my heating system from oil to gas, and the plumber came in and he did the job and blah blah blah. And I said, "Well, does this need to be inspected?" And he says, "Yeah, it's already passed." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Oh, he goes, I used to be one of the inspectors. I know the guy. I'll just call him and he'll just pass it." Now that's a very minor kind of situation. Certainly doesn't pose any kind of public threat, but that's the kind of situation it is. And it's a standing joke as a cost of doing business how much you have to pay people off.
Oh yeah.
So I mean it's a combination of a number of things. Like I said, people legitimately trying to do the job well are handicapped because they have just so many properties that they have to. And then, there's the inspection and
let me ask you about
enforcement.
this. I want you to expand your comments because, there are lots of legal payoffs. For example, when someone goes into business, certainly they need to be regulated and they need to follow code. But municipalities have figured out ways to charge you for things you never knew existed. You got to get a sign permit. You got to get a paint permit. You got to get a parking lot permit. I mean, all of it is legitimate, but a lot of it you just know. Some of it's usurious, and you want to get into nothing's for free. And
there's always a cost of to the municipality. They have to actually pay somebody to do it. And they have to do the background, the paperwork, and all of that kind of stuff that goes along with it. where, I know in our town, we have various permits that you have to take out, but the fees aren't, outrageous. I mean, if you want to cut down a tree here, you have to pay $5 or something for a permit. And, it really is just to ensure that the people doing whatever it is they're requesting are doing it according to the local codes and things like that. You'd be surprised. You've seen it in the city about how people have done stuff. There was that big gas explosion a couple of years ago,
sure.
where people come in and they jury rig, the gas lines and things like that, and that's what the local codes and the enforcement are supposed to prevent. People from doing things like that. Here in a small municipality, we've had situations where we get a report that a deck has collapsed and people have been injured, and so the construction official will go to the permits and see if a permit was taken out to construct the deck, and lo and behold, one hasn't been taken out, and the homeowner is questioned, and he says, "Oh yeah, well I was at Home Depot." And the guy in Home Depot said to me, "Oh, all I need is 1 2x4 to hold this thing up."
Well, yeah. But yeah, I want to get to another aspect of this, though. And this is where I think governments are a lot more calculating. And perhaps I'm wrong, but you can correct me. If we were to find all of the buildings here in New Rochelle that have illegal apartments that have been constructed, we get rich. The city could probably not have to raise taxes for 100 years. Similarly, though, and it depends on who's in office. Now, I don't know how it is now, but I have my own sources. And the court that's in Westchester, for example, in the county, that's supposed to hold building owners accountable, they look the other way more than Reagan in the movie The Exorcist. People could live in squalor, people could have a mess, people could treat their tenants horribly. It's the whole other side of this. And yet there's this reluctance to hurt commerce by being tough on them. So I don't know where the sweet spot is in all of this.
Well, I don't either. Just as a parenthetical, Don Regan, DTR, worked for Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, what did I say? Nixon? Yeah, I couldn't think. My brain would thank you for that.
That's fine.
Well, we worked for him, and I used to worry about it because remember, he was with an iron hand, and one of the things that doesn't work in U.S. politics, iron hands work, but that's not our system. You got to go through the system, and it is frustrating. And see, my point, I was wrestling with Tom because that was a wide-ranging discussion. But one of the issues that we have in this country that has happened in almost every other republic and we saw it in Italy, we saw it certainly in Germany, and we see it in other places even now. Despotic governments work. They're very efficient. They're very effective. But that's not what America is.
No, that's true. But, to get back to what you were saying about, code enforcement and things like that, it in smaller municipalities, it's a little more stable, from administration to administration. In larger cities, it's more political than it is here, because it depends on whose ox is being gored.
Yeah, it does.
Because if you have someone who's of a more liberal bent, they say, well, you know what, all these illegal apartments are housing people who are undocumented.
Yeah,
and, you don't want to go after them.
Well, yeah, but you got to go after them. Otherwise, why should anybody else follow the law? See, that's the paradox. If you want to be benevolent, and I like the idea of, you and I always haven't agreed on this. I like a path to citizenship. If you want to go down that path, go down that path. But you should still find people that break the law. I don't understand why we don't.
Well, here's a good example. There was a budget meeting on the MTA, the Municipal Transit Authority in New York City the other day, and they had all of these protesters. And the thing that they were protesting was that the MTA is going to hire 500 more police to patrol the subways.
Yes.
And you, on the face of it, you're saying to yourself, why would anybody protest that? Why would they think that making the subway, efforts to make the subway safer would be bad? And you hear the protesters saying, all you're doing is going after brown and black people. That's why you want more police.
No, but
You're militarizing the subways.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like an insane point of view.
Of course it is. But yet, and it's one of the problems with democracy. And that's why I'm always telling my friends on the hard right, I get what you don't like. But that's the way democracy works. And it's a part of democracy, by the way, that is failing. I mean, I've been studying the Weimar Republic like crazy. At one point they had 31 parties. It was, it is a bad situation, but it is the system we have. If you want to change the system, say it openly. But don't wrap yourself in the flag and say that that's what you're being loyal to. We need a new flag then.
Well, I think what we do need, though, is we got to break the monopoly of the Republican and Democrat parties on candidates running for office. We shouldn't have 31 parties.
No, we need more parties. Well, there's a new one. There's a new one called the Sam Party. I got one more minute. What else is on your mind today?
Well, that's pretty much it. I'm so tired of this snow already, but
well, that's up where you live in, where you're your own cousin and everything up there in the north. But listen, thank you very, very much, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Vince Russo, everybody, thank you so much. I do believe that we should have our next Get Best John Bailey, but it could be a caller. But we'll play potluck. It is 7:40. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
John Bailey from White Plains,
there he
New
is.
York, USA.
Sorry to get to you late, sir. It has been very, very crazy busy today. I got into this wide-ranging discussion with somebody who cares a lot, and I wanted to answer his question. So far, sorry for being late. John is our man in White Plains. John is our man in White Plains. He is the managing editor and publisher of WhitePlainsCitizen.net. He is also a TV star of his own right. He is the host of White Plains Week on local television. And John is one of our stable of local journalists who do the hard digging work. What's going on in White Plains, my friend?
Well, in White Plains, the intriguing situation we have is the city's eminent domain decision to consider 13 properties along East Post Road for eminent domain for an as of yet unknown project. No details on it. And it is always curious when that happens. Usually you present something and then this is what we'd like to do and we'd like these companies to be a part of it or whatever. So I had a chat with Guy Arango over at his offices in White Plains, and he had a meeting with a number of the owners who, coincidentally enough, are basically minority. I mean, they're the number of black and brown faces, as you put it, of owners of those properties. And they are discussing how they proceed with this and haven't made any decisions yet.
When you say how to proceed, now what is the angle of this story? Is it that eminent domain is being pushy, or is it that people want to take advantage and right as they should and take advantage of getting a good price when eminent domain is imposed on them?
I think you might have hit upon that if the city would like a good price, because once you target properties for eminent domain, not target but consider properties for eminent domain, you have devalued the property.
Yeah, you have, haven't you? Now, just I want to go back in history. Again, it was before my time here in Westchester, but didn't your city famously use eminent domain to change the very shape of your downtown?
They did, and that was back in the mid to late 60s.
I mean, it was like you did more damage with eminent domain than our bomb did on Nagasaki. I mean, you just changed the whole city.
Yes, and we're still radioactive.
So where do you think this is going to go? Who's winning this little tussle?
Well, Originally, White Plains Hospital was attempting to secure some properties up around Grand Street, which is off of Post Road, and they failed at that. And when this eminent domain first hearing was held back in September, who should show up but White Plains Hospital?
Oh my!
And I thought that was a indicator to me that they had what do they say? They had skin in the game.
Well, yes, they certainly do.
Yes, skin in the game, I think, is the real estate phrase.
So where is this headed? Where's this story headed?
It looks to me as if that is going to be up to the owners, because they could very well wait, see what price they get, say it's not enough, and then sue them.
Now, how serious are they? Your city's had a lot of starts, and we're talking with John Bailey. He is our man in White Plains, WhitePlainsCitizen.net reporter. How serious is your city? For the while, you've had a lot of stops and starts with development. You've looked at some of the other cities, particularly New Rochelle, a little bit enviously, as they did 30 years ago when you redeveloped your city. How serious are they? How earnest are they in going forward with this development, though?
Well, White Plains, I think, has this vision of becoming a world-class health center with the Montefiore White Plains Hospital merger, and that would fit right into this. Yeah. However, the question I have for you is, why in the world would you use eminent domain for the benefit of basically a business, quote, nonprofit, unquote?
Well, that's true, and usually eminent domain is done for the public good. Wouldn't they have to, in a court of law, have to prove that it was for the public good?
Well, yeah, that is something that they would have to do.
See, I'm smart. I come up with good ideas once in a while, John Bailey.
Absolutely, but they would also have to prove that the eminent domain was done in bad faith to lower the price of their properties.
Well, this is going
running for many years.
What has His Eminence Tom Roach had to say, the mayor? Well, has he emerged from his bunker to talk about any of this?
No. mean, in other words, if you really wanted to do this, you would do a huge dog and pony show. When you first introduced the idea, you'd have really very public hearings. You would have a plan designed by somebody showing what you plan to do and how the new owners might be able to participate.
Okay.
Wouldn't you?
I probably would.
Doesn't that sound like a Thompson and Bender plan?
Yes, it does. It does, and yes, I'm surprised that it hasn't. I mean, here in New Rochelle, with all the development we had so many dog and pony shows. We had to hire a special group to pick up the poo from all the dogs and ponies. All right, what else do you have in that wonderful list of yours?
Well, we are now thinking about developing Indian Point. According to the press release from the Lowy office, declaring $15 million is on the way to help the towns up around Indian Point. And
whoa, back up just a second. Indian Point, by the time they're done decommissioning the reactor and everything else,
yes.
What you're really talking about is developing the periphery around Indian Point to make up for the loss in jobs. Are you not?
Well, that isn't clear, because the copy I read was that this would be also angled towards developing the property at Indian Point, which is really unclear, because unless you remove the radioactive rods, who is going to live on top of radioactive rods?
Well, nobody is. But they will eventually do that. But that's my point. This $15 million is to do what? I should think it's to stimulate the economy not related to Indian Point, because eventually there will be jobs for the cleanup. Eventually there will be jobs in whatever takes over that space, if and when that happens. But
you bring up a very good point.
But the hit to the economy is going to be enormous. I mean,
whether this money will be used for the communities to replace the property tax loss from not having Indian Point anymore. But it's theirs to, shore up and prevent a tremendous tax increase for the school district and the towns up there. And that isn't clear to me whether this is their money to help development.
Tell me something.
Whether it's their money to keep them solvent.
Does Her Eminence, Congresswoman Lowy, good pork barrel stuff, getting us that $15 million, but they ought to have a press conference so we can ask that question. What is this money to be used for? What else do you have what other arrows in that quiver of yours, John Bailey, as we pass through 748?
There is growth in the river towns on the west side of Westchester County, and I learned this from
which town?
Alan Begun, who is the owner of the River Journal, the new owner of the River Journal, and he's really increased circulation of that up to about 20,000.
We got to get him on the air. We got to get you. Do you have some
great.
contact
info? Last week.
Would you send me his contact information? We want to get him on Radio Westchester.
I will tell you. I will look. Let's see.
I've always been surprised, John, and maybe you can help me here, that our river towns don't get more attention. How Yonkers hasn't been able. I mean, they've done some work on the waterfront, obviously.
Well, here's the scoop.
But this is a beautiful thing.
He has made the River Journal profitable. It's a monthly newspaper.
So what you're saying is
profitable.
The River Journal has made a big splash.
It has.
And
then they're opening up a
the
River
tide has changed.
Towns North edition. River Journal North for Peekskill, Croton on Hudson, and Cortland.
Okay.
An uncovered portion of the county, and he already has tremendous advertising interests. It's going to be a separately edited paper, and he comes from the media giant that just bought Low Hut, and he has done.
Get me this man. Get me this man. Let's get him on the radio here because we're all of Westchester and beyond now. What else you got, John Bailey? You always have a nice list for me. I have some stuff for you, but first this. Go ahead.
We have a press release out from Hudson Magazine talking about their latest analysis of the real estate. I didn't even know there was a Hudson Magazine.
Yeah, there is.
Well, now I know, right? So anyway, they quote a couple of realtors as saying that Westchester is poised to really have a booming real estate market in the spring because prices have lowered. Now is the time to buy and to sell and all that. But this is what they have been saying every year for about 4 years.
However, isn't it also fair to say that the new Trump tax plan, being as onerous as it is for property owners, have made the prices of houses more attractive, even though they're worth less? I mean, that's the paradox.
Well, nobody knows the impact of that tax plan until they start filing their taxes in April.
Just wait. You're gonna hear.
Seriously.
It's gonna sound like a Halloween movie with the gnawing and the moans and the gnashing of teeth.
Well, if you haven't withheld taxes commensurate to what you lose in your deductions, you are in huge trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are.
You really are. And I don't think a lot of people, I don't know how good the accountants have been of really warning people who use accountants about this.
Well, they're certainly going to find out. What else do you have, John Bailey?
Well, let's see. What else? Tom Abenanti came up with an idea last week at the county executives media party. And,
I could not make that. Yeah, I know. I did not get to the media. Did they
I was sitting there waiting to hold court, but nobody talked to me.
Did they have the usual?
From the county, yes.
Did they go cheap again? The last one we had was just little pieces of cheese and crackers, and that was about it, and water.
Well, no, this is an advancement. I mean, the county budget is up, so
did they have food?
The snacks were good.
The snack last time, homeless people wouldn't go to that party the last time.
No. It was, and I'm going along with the humorous flavor of the show because of the pow over America this morning.
Oh yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yes. Continue, my friend.
Funeral pow.
Yes.
Over Washington. And what I got from the meeting was I talked with Tom Abenanti, and he was suggesting a weekly hour cable show involving various news organizations that are on cable now, sort of like in Marrone and or in Greenberg, etc., as a hour-long wrap-up show
Of
that
what?
would be of news of the week or whatever.
Well, Tom,
From
well,
around
Tom
the
should
town.
know this. And I'm gonna. He's coming on Monday. The thing about that is, you need an editor. How much time do you give to each city? I mean, it's the same stuff that when you put
Yeah.
stories out, or when I do a morning show. What am I going to put first? What am I going to give an hour to, 10 minutes to, a half hour to? And sometimes you get it
Yeah,
right. So, but
who
somebody's
is
got to
going
make
to
the
run it?
decision.
That's
Somebody's got to
the
run
problem.
it. Yeah, that is the
Somebody
problem.
has to run it. Somebody who has to
I mean,
have
you
faith in truth, justice, and the American way.
And you can't give Bronxville or a small or a really tiny town shouldn't get the same coverage that Yonkers gets or White Plains, clearly. So you run into that. But yeah, it would need to be managed, and it would be interesting. I mean, we've tried to do that here with all of you, and one of the things we've done with all of the news outlets, we give you at least 20, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, because that's what we're in business for. So if they do that, they'll have to get an editor for sure. Hey, listen, I just wanted to share this with you, and I'm sharing it with Jake because we're going to talk about it. Jake is in, and we're going to. He's brought us some more letters to Bob. But Jake, true story. I've got listeners now in Jordan. I'm talking about the Middle East.
Yes.
We got listeners in Jordan. We've got listeners in Calgary, Alberta, that have been writing us. Ohio, California, the Netherlands. This is very interesting, this experiment of ours here, John Bailey.
Well, yeah, I find that when I first started White Plains Week, people were watching us from Europe.
Well, there you go. And what about those occasions when you have Bob Marrone on? You must get millions of more followers.
Well, absolutely, Bob. I mean, people still call me about, when are we going to get Bob Marrone on White Plains Week again?
They want me back on. See, by popular demand.
Well, you are back on.
Well, I'm on this way as well. Hey, John, going back to White Plains, one of the things you guys do every year, and of course we're 3 weeks away from it, or 2.5, whatever the case may be, you have the second best ball dropping in the state. Is that still very popular?
Yes, it is. But, of course, it's popular because the crowds are always overestimated.
Mm-hmm.
And but people do go down there. If the weather is good and not raining, it's okay, and it's very secure.
And it's got to be
one
good.
way in and one way out.
And within walking distance are all those pubs and restaurants and different things. And, of course, you've got that fancy hotel. How did that hotel do? I remember when it was opening, the Ritz or whatever it's called.
Ritz-Carlton?
Is it still doing well?
We think so. I mean, it's the best hotel you can stay at in Westchester County.
Does it still have the pool up on the whatever it is, the 20th floor? I remember.
Yes.
That made a big splash too, you know. In fact, the River
Well, the
Town.
funny thing about that building was they built an extra floor by mistake.
Excuse me?
They built an extra floor on it by mistake.
How do you build an extra floor by mistake?
Because you didn't count.
But was the architect, you know, was he smoking something during the final?
No, that was so funny. It was noticed by our building commissioner.
Can
at
you
the
believe
time,
that? Hey,
and said,
Jake.
Wait a minute here.
The big hotel in White Plains, Jake.
They just
John Bailey, our
signed
man
off
in
on
White
it.
Plains, is telling us.
Signed off on it. Everything happens in White Plains.
No, I got to share this with Jake. The fanciest hotel in Westchester, they just discovered, has an extra floor.
Well, that was back when it was built.
No, but that's that, you know, well, that's like some buildings don't have a 13th floor.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's like a horror movie?
No, well, some buildings actually have a maintenance floor that they don't count. 13's supposed to be unlucky, but they literally had well, did they rent it? What did they do with it? Do you know?
No, it's part of the hotel.
No, it is all right.
It's a whole floor of rooms, I believe. Now, the other thing that I felt was fascinating was Tara Rosenthal's expose of the sex trade in Westchester County.
Say more about that before we send
on
you
News 12. And I thought that was a very bold report by her. And And I also felt it was great that the FBI spoke to her about it. And it seems as if hotels, some of them with pretty big names, are housing this sex trade.
Are they complicit, though? That's the
Of course not. They're not complicit. But hey, give me a break.
Wow. Now, the sex trade, what countries is it coming from?
We do not know. It's mostly underage.
God almighty. We need to look into that a little further.
Tara Rosenthal just did a great job on that. She should get an Emmy for that.
She's got a few already, Tara. I know her well. And we're going to get her on to talk about.
Call her up.
I will.
And get her on if she's willing to talk about it, because I watched it and I said, wow.
Well, you're not kidding. And listen, wow, we're out of time, so we're going to send you on your way. Now, obviously, next week will be the day after Christmas. You're still welcome to come on. We'll call you if for some reason we have a schedule change. But, John, just in case, have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and holiday. My best to you and yours, and thank you for your contributions to the program.
Well, there's always something to contribute from White Plains.
All right, we're coming up. Yeah, this is true. We're coming up on 8 o'clock. John Bailey, WhitePlainsCitizen.net. Thank you very much. Now,
happy holiday, everybody.
Same to you. We're going to give a full weather report, attribute some sponsors, and then we're going to talk with Jake. I want to talk sports with him, a couple of items that were in the news last night, particularly Garrett Cole. But Jake has also done his homework, and we have more letters to Bob coming up. And for the 8 o'clock hour, I will don my Santa hat. But the thing, Jake, should I do it with lights? Santa hat and lights? All right. Let's get a reset then. It is 8 o'clock on the button. And I know you all want the weather from us because it's cold. Okay, as we go through 8 o'clock, it's not even 8:01 yet. It's 19 degrees, and when I tell you that it's cold, it is. Actually, it's not up to 19 yet. It's still 15 here. We'll get up to 27 today. We'll pass through 19, of course. Sunshine, though, all day through high thin clouds. The temperature will again level off at about 27. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature 17. The wind out of the northwest 5 to 15. And boy, last night, or early this morning, I should say, we had gusts up to 40, and the cars were going this way and that way on the highways and byways. On Friday, that would be tomorrow, sunny, the temperature 30 degrees. The wind will be out of the northwest 5 to 10 miles an hour. Saturday, partly sunny. We'll get up to a balmy 33 overnight, getting down to 25. Sunday, still more sun. The high 42 degrees. The overnight low will be 29. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. As we get into the 8 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Jake, of course, and then actually we'll go over the letters first because Jake always gets a kick out of those. That's Jake Schaefer. He, of course, remember tomorrow, for those of you who invest in your sporting wagering, Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retail. Will bring you Jake's picks of the week. Now, Dominic's Fine Cigars, a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and they bring you also the bottom of the hour. Plug-in virtual reality, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, and Aging Issues Radio and Aging Issues Management. And, of course, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Now, some of the stories we've been following for you this morning, obviously the impeachment. We had a long talk with Tom about that, and he hadn't been calling in all week. We gave him a little extra time. That was very interesting. Thomas, thank you for that. That the top story, the impeachment, and the fact, by the way, there's a subtlety in there that you need to be aware of. Nancy Pelosi has not yet decided when she will present the articles of impeachment to the Senate, and the smart money says that both she and the Senate, that is the House of Representatives and the Senate, will be negotiating how the rules of the actual impeachment process will take place when January comes. So who wants what witnesses when, how long will they get, and so forth. So we look forward to that. Here in New Rochelle, they hired Mr. Alex Marrero, a new school administrator with a record of helping increase graduation rates and improve schools. And again, he's hired to be an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. Hillary Clinton was down county yesterday, up at Pace, talking about a book, also talking about impeachment. In Cold Spring, we have an ex-Cold Spring teacher there, a trustee accused of trying to set up a teen sex meeting. Charles Husty III tried to set something up, 36-year-old he, with a teenager, a young man at the school. And in Rockland County, a special education teacher there, Yesenia Vasquez, a teacher at Stony Point Elementary, she's been convicted of abusing a child. The second time that she did it, a special needs child used her knee to lift the head up and then pull on the hair of the student. She already had one conviction. And a manhunt is underway in Orange County for a man now accused of murder. And this individual that they're searching for, Dave Hoovier, that's the Orange County District Attorney, Jamad Murphy is the one that they're searching for. He's been on the run since fatally shooting, or at least allegedly shooting, 23-year-old Matthew Napoleano in November outside of the Made in Puerto Rico Latin Cuisine Sports Bar. Boy, that's a long title for a business establishment. At any rate, this same person was acquitted earlier this year of another. He was alleged to have murdered someone else. And Rockland, kids lose a bid for vaccine exception, so parents challenge the state's emergency regulations. In that case, it looked like they were trying to say, no, there were medical reasons. And folks, we can tell you that if there were medical reasons, then they should say so, and that because the law does allow exemptions for medical reasons, so we're not really quite sure. Well, I understand that Jake, doing his homework, and where is my hat, has done more homework and going over the letters and notes that we get here.
The best ones I find.
Pardon? He takes the best ones. Go ahead. You filtered them out. He filtered out the best ones. And we got to get in the holiday spirit for the last hour of the show here. How do I? Ooh. Don't even say anything. Just don't. Beep. Should I put the lights on with this too? You want the lights on? So I'm going to look like an idiot. Oh, I'll get them. No, I'll get them. I'm going to put the lights on. Got my Christmas lights. You got to make it flash. God, I look like an idiot. Oh my goodness. Okay. Where's this part with the ball? Okay, there you go. How do? Am I ready for Christmas?
Very festive.
Very festive. Okay. Jake, set us up. What have you? I'll read these letters that you want, but what? Tell me how you came about this. What did you do that I got these letters?
I was just going through our voluminous listener mail.
Okay, voluminous listener mail. Okay, and by the way, I already told you I got this. By the way, these people from Jordan, they've got problems. They have family in Yonkers. They listen every day. The Netherlands. I don't know how I guess they listen to the rerun, but okay.
Most of the mail I find is from Westchester.
Well, yeah, most of it is. Okay, dear Bob,
I actually wrote an introduction for you if you wanted.
Well, I want it. Yeah, that's what I was saying. You do the introduction. Oh, you mean you want me to? Okay, hold on. Our stocking is ever flowing with our listener mail. Jolly old St. Bob, beep, 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 is going to answer his Christmas gift to you. See, you should have read that. Next time we do, see, you got to read. No, you want me to do it. All right, fine. Dear Bob, happy holiday. What is the most you have ever spent on an Xmas gift? On the other hand, what was the worst gift you have gotten? I wore it 2 days ago. The worst gift I ever got was that ugly Christmas sweatshirt, which I will wear.
That's kind of
Christmas.
the thing to do, have an ugly Christmas sweater.
Yeah,
we'll have ugly Christmas sweater parties.
And all of us have gotten ties that we know someone else got that they hated and just regave it to us. Now, what's the most I ever spent on a Christmas gift? Well, I'm going to get in trouble here. But probably the most expensive person in my life, it's not my other half, although over the years it generally is, was my grandson and my daughter. They toys. But my grandson, I think I got him an Xbox one year that cost me a fortune. No, all I've got to do is show up to the hockey shop with him. The hockey sticks are now a couple of $100. His skates are $350. So I would say hockey stuff for my grandson. Now, on the other hand, what was the worst gift? Yeah, those are the things. And that's Luke from White Plains. Okay. Listen to this, Bob. I will just use the term Yule log in this note to let you go from there. The best, Tina from Tuckahoe. Tuckahoe, Tina! Okay, the U-Log. I'm going to let that go, except... Now, people who know me from my hockey days know that I have an accident, and I had a hockey injury, and in my left leg I have a 13-inch rod as well, titanium, by the way. Just saying, and we'll leave it at that. Mr. Marrone, please rank your top 3 Xmas movies. Mine are Christmas Story, Rocky IV, Rocky Defeats the Russian, Xmas Day, Xmas Vacation. Curious. T-Y or Ty, I guess. All right, it's mine. My favorite Christmas movie is Home Alone. Okay, I love that movie. And my second, why am I going to get myself in trouble? Santa Baby. No, why are you laughing?
Never seen it.
Okay, well, it's with McCarthy. What's her face? The anti-vaxxer, the former Playboy model, radio host. It's a good movie. It's about
Jenny McCarthy.
Yeah.
Jeez,
No, but you
that's
see,
some
no. You see, no. Here's where you're going.
You're listening to your political advice from this man.
No, but listen. No, you see, right away you prejudge me. I've been in. No, let me tell you. Look, I look like I have lights on my head and a Santa hat. Now, okay. The reason why I like that movie, of course, she's a beautiful woman, but that's it really is separate. Now, I will admit to first putting the movie on because it was her. I said, this should be interesting. But it's actually a movie. She actually is the daughter of Santa Claus. And her dad gets sick, and she has to go up and help him with the elves and stuff.
Multiple Academy Award nominations.
No. And then she falls in love with the local mail carrier at the North Pole, and she leaves this creep that she worked with in Wall Street in Madison. It's actually a very sweet movie. And what's sweet about it, this is what I like, and it just so you know, Santa's house is very Christmassy, and it's the North Pole, and I like that kind of thing. Okay, I admit to it. And my third favorite Christmas movie is Bad Santa, which is just evil with Billy Bob Thornton. It's a lot of fun. So those are my favorite, but nothing tops Home Alone. I mean, I still, after all these years, hi, Michael. After all these years, Michael Brown walks right by here every day, and it's good to see him healthy, a former radio broadcaster, also does work for the county now. The best part of that movie, probably, well, there's so many great parts, but is when Stern has the spider Marv. He screams on his face, screams, and then when he hits him with the tire on. Anyway, okay, dear Bob, my kids are driving me to my wits' ends. Would putting actual coal in their stockings be considered some kind of child abuse in today's no backbone society? Probably. Okay, you can't even yell at your kids anymore. Although, have you ever heard Russell? What's his name? Russell Pete. I forget his name. The comedian. He is an Indian comedian. He's a Canadian Indian, and now an American Indian. Not a Native American, but from India. He talks about how his father. He tried to tell his father one day, "Do you realize, Dad, that if you hit me, okay, I'm going to call Child Protection Services." Now, I'm quoting him. It's politically incorrect to use accents, but I am using it the way he did in this bit. And it's so funny when his father says, "Russell, by the time I'm going to put the hurting on you real bad, and by the time they get here, I will still have put the hurting on you." So it's... that's how he dealt with it. So, yeah, probably they would. So those are Bob's letters. Anything else? Any other side notes that you picked up when you were doing this?
No, but when I was walking in, did you call Vincent inbred?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I did. Well, I got, well, you come from upstate, from Syracuse. Are you your own cousin?
I think I am related to my wife in some...
When your mom said to you, stop playing with your sister and come in the house to eat dinner.
Now we're going down the wrong
I'm
path.
just saying. But did she have other intentions? What did she mean by that?
But anyway,
Jake, get in the house.
Did you watch the Garrett Cole press conference?
I watched pieces of it, and I couldn't wait to ask you about it.
The thing that really stood out to me, and I didn't know this, that Nike and Major League Baseball have struck a contract. So Garrett Cole was wearing a Yankees jersey with the Nike swoosh.
Yeah.
So I went to MLB.com, and guess how much a Garrett Cole jersey goes for on
How
MLB.com?
much? Hold on. Point the mic up. What do you think of the new mic flags? Do you like them or the words?
I like them.
Okay,
I prefer
good, good.
these.
I'm going to put them on the
more
the air.
compact.
Yeah.
But how much would you guess now that Nike and MLB have struck a deal? How much is an official Nike MLB jersey going for?
I'm afraid to ask how much.
Just guess.
$150.
$359.99.
And people are going to pay it.
I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't spend more than $30 on a jersey.
Do you know what they should have done? They should have been less greedy and more marketing savvy. They should have priced it along with his contract. What is it, $325 million? They should have done it for $325. But
What's really interesting is the Yankees have a journeyman who wore number 45, and of course Garrett Cole is going to take 45. I'm sure it was part of his negotiations. But what will he give?
I bet you writes him a check.
Oh, I would hope so.
Yeah,
but
I
I
would.
wonder how big that check would be.
What would you want it to be realistically now? And I lost my schedule. But go
Maybe
ahead.
a new car, something along those lines.
He could buy a fleet.
Yeah, probably. That's what I would ask for.
All right, now the press conference itself, he had that and we had it here. You should have it in your paper too. What did I do with it? He held up that
sign.
that sign that he had as a kid,
Yeah.
which was kind of, here it is, Yankee fan today, tomorrow, next week. Do you know what that spoke to? Do you remember when a year and a half ago? Yeah, yes, and the wife is gorgeous as well. Somebody told me. When John Tavares went to the Leafs, he had these pictures of him with his Leaf blanket on and all that. How much do you buy his? And I'm not trying to be cynical, but just realistic. If somebody gave me $325 million, I would adopt their kids. I mean, how
Are you
much?
questioning his actual fandom?
Yeah.
Well, they have a picture of him actually holding the sign
Yeah, I
as
saw
an
it.
11-year-old.
Okay.
So I guess it's got to, unless he. This
And
was
his dad grew
a
up here,
ruse
yeah.
That there's a picture of him at every major league ballpark, and his dad was thinking ahead 30 years to.
See, I get that because there's a part of me. I'm no longer a real Dodger fan because everything I ever loved is gone. But had I become a ball player and went to the Dodgers, it would be pretty cool to wear the Dodger blue because I grew up a Brooklyn Dodger fan. I mean, they left when I was 9 years old. But I kept rooting for the Dodgers, I would say right up to maybe 10 years ago, because they still had the lineage. They had Lasorda, Koufax was out there, Drysdale. And then that whole second wave of players later with Don Sutton, that great infield that they had in the 70s and so forth. So, but then again, the Dodgers are no longer the Dodgers. Even they don't even have a scintilla of what they were in Brooklyn now.
They're trying to spend some money to get it back, though.
Yeah, they are. But then, you know what they seem to do? They seem to go right up to the precipice and then they back off. Maybe they should have got Garrett Cole.
They tried.
But then again, they had Kershaw in his prime. They've always found a way to lose in the playoffs. They've become the Giants of years gone by when they were perennial second place, or the Dodgers of the 50s when they only won one World Series. So do you? But I still have this issue that I keep wrestling with, and in fact, I've even been listening to the fan more to try and get a sense of how they view it. They needed a starting pitcher, so he'll get them there again. But again, the playoffs, it's pot luck. I mean, you could have a great pitcher go sour in the World Series or in the playoffs. Or again, and I keep going back, and I'm not trying to put this on Aroldis Chapman. I mean, when a guy throws 103 miles an hour and then he decides to throw you a slider, he's obviously trying to, and it got hit out of the park. But that's baseball. It's the least predictable of all sports.
Well, we've been debating how much is a World Series worth, and Hal Steinbrenner said he doesn't want one World Series. He wants a few World Series.
I wonder how much money they make in the World Series when they're playing.
I'm sure the TV contracts.
Alone. Yeah. Well, good for them. I mean, because I hate to see people spend all that money and not get a return on their investment. And I know people would say to me, well, the Yankees aren't going broke anytime soon.
No.
Apropos, what about across the river? What across the city in Queens? Do you think the Mets have done enough?
I don't know. The National League is getting so tough. The Nationals are going to be great again. The Braves are going to be good. The Phillies are going to be good. But how much fun would DeGrom Cole Subway Series be?
That would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty.
And then we'd have my great debate: the winner versus the ERA leader. That would be a lot of fun.
That's a good debate. Cole versus DeGrom. I might go Cole.
Yeah, even you like the W's, those 20 W. And it's hard to win 20 games today because you don't stay in the game long enough. You don't pitch enough innings. Do you know what amazed me? I was looking at his record. In this day and age when nobody throws even 300 innings, he had 326 strikeouts.
Yeah.
Does he throw that hard or does his ball move?
Both.
Okay, because
He's got everything.
now you're the analytics part of our brain trust here. Imagine you and I being the brain trust. You know what we are? We're both half-wits, but together we're a full wit.
Not even that.
But they have all these things now, Jake, spin rates, velocity off the bat. Do they, for a pitcher, what's the most, I know swings and misses matter. What's the most important item? Is it spin rate or is it movement, do you know?
Spin rate, and of course I like just the velocity.
Well, there were some pitchers, though, who used to throw real hard, like Dick Selma. You won't remember him. He pitched for the Mets. Was a decent relief pitcher. He threw hard, but with no movement. And when he didn't throw extra hard, boy, they just whacked the living daylights out of him. So you got to have. And then there are pitchers that don't throw that hard, but their movement is extraordinary. So
Not too many knuckleballers, though.
knuckleballers are hard, and even managers don't respect them. Like I thought that. I was very surprised that no one wanted R.A. Dickey because they eat innings, knuckleballers. And he still was a 500 pitcher at the end. He was a 500 pitcher. Well, he pitched until he was like 42. I thought he had another year or two in him. But they would talk about movement. That year he pitched for the Mets when he could still throw a fastball in the mid-80s. That was a tough combo, man. He was good. He was good. But I don't think, do we have any knuckleballers left?
Maybe one or two. I don't think so.
Okay, the next thing I wanted to ask you about was what we saw out of the Knicks the other night, a mirage, 140 points.
Yes.
Well, and what's happened to defenses in the NBA? Why are the scores up so high? The three-point shooting?
Analytics, yeah. 3-point, makes more sense to take 70 3-pointers than it does to make how many layups, mid-range jump shots. So shoot the three.
Would you keep the three-point shot in the game?
I would move it back.
Move it back.
Yeah.
Because guys have become really expert at it now. And so you would move it back.
Yeah.
What do you think it would do to the game if would be more pick and rolls if they took it out?
It would, now if you're a 7-footer and you can't shoot the three, you're worthless. Not worthless, but you're not the number one pick anymore.
I was listening to
But now you see the incredible 7-footers that can, shoot 3-pointers, that can dribble the ball up the court.
I'm glad you brought it up.
So skilled.
Since you know basketball, I was listening on the way back from upstate last week to a show out of Philly. And they were talking about the center's there. He's the most important
Embiid.
player on the team.
Yeah.
But they're also saying that he's
one
got
of those
some
freaks.
Yeah, but he's got some issues.
Very injury prone.
He's injury prone, number one, and number two, he's become overly concerned about his play under the basket, where they wanted to shoot more. Does that make sense?
He can shoot the three, but they want him.
A 7'1" guy shooting three. It's almost like they've changed the position.
Exactly.
Now, Porzingis. I've always been very hard on Porzingis because I have this, and it's just a personal thing with divas. He was a diva. I believe that, but is he that good?
Porzingis?
Yeah.
He could be. He could be the best player in the NBA.
Why?
7'3", and he plays like he's 6'5".
That's pretty good, huh? Yeah. All right.
You gonna stay up for the debate tonight?
No, I've not. It's still too. When it gets down to 2 or 3, then I'll watch the debates. No, in fact, you could even quiz me on this if you want. I've admitted it on the air. I have to do, and this isn't poor little Bobby because I generally love what I do, but the climate in the country combined with the disingenuousness of people that debate on both parties. At least I enjoyed when the Republicans were running 4 years ago because Trump did make it exciting, and his juxtaposition to people like Ted Cruz, who's the most hated guy in Washington, and he's kind of skating. Trump sucks all the air out of the room. A little Nico. In other words, their characters were so different. You could do a comic strip about each one. But the Democrats are very amorphous to me. They're not impressive. Buttigieg's impressive, but he's not ready for prime time.
So what happens when there's a contested convention, what happens then?
Well, that's pretty good because you got brokers on the floor, because at the end of the day,
Does
it's the
Hillary
delegate.
swoop in then? Is that when she
No,
swoops in?
I'm hoping, at least from the standpoint of what I would prefer to see, I think the guy that sweeps in with all his money and influence is the former mayor of New York, Mr. Bloomberg.
He's not getting any traction. And his,
He's not Mr.
his
Excitement.
stop and frisk and the comments he's made, some of the sexist comments. Now our president is on tape, bragging about sexual assault. But Democrats do things differently. It kind of seems.
Yeah, I actually thought that it was a mistake on his part to apologize for stop and frisk because it worked. It was actually one of the better parts of his legacy. So for him to throw away one of the things that labeled him a moderate, in other words, doing things that work so long as they're legal, because one of the reasons that Donald Trump is president is that the far left likes to toy with reality. Earlier today we were talking about this. My big beef with the far right is the far right now, not the right per se, is that they manufacture these synthetic narratives. My beef with the far left is they'll take a bit of reality like, gee, you're targeting blacks. But if the neighborhood where all the crime is happens to be black, you're taking a fact and twisting it. That's their gift. So I'm so sick of that on both sides that I won't watch the debate because the debates, they don't know when he says anything meaningful.
Yeah, I'll be at Star Wars tonight. I
Oh
will not
yes,
be watching
you
the
know
debates,
Star Wars.
and I won't care. I'll pay attention maybe November 1st and decide who to vote for then.
No, well, I'll tell you what I do. I mean, I don't ignore them.
This is
I
a very
wait-
uninspiring group.
Yes, they really are.
candidates.
I wait until the end of it, and I read, and I go to all the websites, including Fox on this one, and I try to get the narrative, because one of the good things about, and that's why Fox should never go away. One of the things that Jack Breslin's convinced me of is more is better. But at least I get their take on the Democrats and how far left they want. I read the Times. I look at the Washington Post. I get the essentials of what went on. I read the New York Post and the Times, blah, 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 all my websites that I subscribe to now, and 80,000 of them. And I use that, and then I look at the snippets on the national news. And because it's all baloney, they just don't say anything meaningful. They're afraid to say anything meaningful. So it's wasteless. It's useless. Absolutely useless to look at those debates. At any rate, I did have so.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to come to Star Wars with me. You're going to bring a microphone and just interview the costume people.
No, I know.
Too cold?
No, you know what? I love that they do that. I love that they enjoy it because I have the things that I enjoy that are off the beaten path. But I love the first two Star Wars movies. But then
You could call them inbreds.
No, just you. And your mom listens to the show. Mom, I'm only kidding. We call this shtick, You should be calling the show herself. A couple of other sports stories. What did you think of the Devils trading their best player? And was he the Porzingis of New York hockey? I mean, I always got the impression that Taylor Hall didn't want to be here in the first place.
Not the guy you want to talk to about hockey.
No, I know, but anyway, they traded
Did they
their
get
best
a boatload of draft picks?
Yeah, draft picks, but a lot of them.
I
are
like that
conditioned.
strategy.
They got 5. They got a couple of guys that are already in the league, and one of the things that I've tended to not pay enough attention to for a guy that knows hockey. In baseball, they do it all the time because prospects are less determined. But if you remember when the Mets traded, speaking of R.A. Dickey, they
Yes.
got Zach
They
Wheeler
swindled
and they got
the Blue
D.R.
Jays.
Nod. Okay.
But the one trade I think it all goes back to was the Cowboys. They traded Herschel Walker
Yes.
to the Vikings for, I think, 8 draft picks, and that turned into Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith.
Well, that's
Michael
what I'm
Irvin.
saying. Whereas
3
in
Super
hockey,
Bowls.
in hockey, I've not now draft picks I get, but in hockey, what they do a lot is, and in baseball, but in hockey, I was just ignorant of it. Don't ask me why. For example, the Rangers got McDonough, their best defenseman of the last decade. They got him in a trade with Montreal. But he was in the minors or still in junior, but they'd already drafted him. Similarly, this guy Fox, the Rangers had, when they traded McDonough, he came in for that. And I've always been tempted to dismiss the guys already playing. Oh, I got to clear my lines. I've tended to dismiss the guys already playing, to my detriment, because I think 3 of the people or 2 of the people that they're getting for Taylor Hall are already playing hockey somewhere in the minors, and I've always been dismissive of that. It's a big mistake on my part. Some of them have just been terrific players. And so one more sports question that I had for you. Eli's done, eh? You're not going to see him anymore?
I said I was 50-50 on that. I think he might announce his retirement, decide he still can play a little bit, want to play, and come back.
Okay, now as a prelude to tomorrow, and before we let you go, we've got Andy Spano coming up next. Before we let you go, maybe you can help me solve a riddle.
Some great football games.
Wait, before you do that, maybe you can help me solve a riddle. You notice you can't see my phone anywhere. So I get out of my car, and I know I had the phone in the car, right? I get out of the car. I come in here, and I have a lot of things to turn on. I have a lot of and because it was so cold overnight, my computer was slow, my printer was slow. Got all involved in that. Finally got the show prep done. I can't find my phone. I went out to my car. It's not in my car, and it's not in here, and I have no idea where it is. The only other place I went was to go get my newspapers, because some of them, as you know, I still get the hard copy to get a feel. I don't know where it is. Don't have a clue. Maybe now that it's light, I'll find it. I have no idea, but I know it was in the car. Isn't that weird?
I'm sure it's in the car.
Yeah, well, that's what we'll bet on. Or I left it at the newsstand. Okay, tonight we have Thursday night football. You have a horse in this race?
There's no Thursday night football. How come? 3 Saturday games.
Okay, so give us just an early
Well,
view.
we had Bud on yesterday, and I agreed to go with.
Oh man, but go ahead.
And I agreed to go with the Patriots because I will take his sage advice every day of the week and twice on Sundays.
He'll take his sage. Yeah, but this is the same guy who let you play regularly on a baseball team. We question.
Sage advice.
All right, go ahead.
Well,
what intrigues you? Now, don't make the actual picks now, because tomorrow you have to compete with the wheel.
All these games count, which is so much fun because we're getting right to the playoffs, and teams are vying for home field. Teams are vying to get into the playoffs.
Wait a minute. Oh my God, I look like an idiot. Why haven't you been calling me out with my lights on my head and my Santa? Okay,
Very festive.
Very festive. Go ahead.
Well, great Monday night game. I love 2 of the games on Saturday. Then we're stuck here being in New York, in the tri-state area, so we're stuck with the Giants and Jets. So go to Beachmonts where they have the satellite and watch a real game Sunday at 1 o'clock because the Giants and the Jets are both on at 1 on Sunday.
So you're gonna So you just tell us the games that interest you, but don't tell us who you're picking. Tell us the games that interest you, so people can prepare to compete with you tomorrow and compete with the wheel.
The Monday night game: Vikings in Minnesota against the Packers. The Vikings are actually 5.5-point favorites against Aaron Rodgers.
Wow.
The Patriots-Bills game.
Oh, give me Rodgers. See, these are Bob's picks. Give me Rodgers. Go ahead.
And of course, the Cowboys-Eagles playing for the division.
That's a great game. What's the spread likely to be?
The spread is the Cowboys are favored by 2.5 in
Philadelphia.
Man,
that's a pick'em affair, man, isn't it?
In Philadelphia, that's too hard for me to pick.
But
we'll have to talk to Steve. He's got Philly info.
All right, we'll get Steve Callis. We have to bring into this too. We're gonna have to start bringing the gentleman we had on yesterday into a lot of these. He's good. We got to bring Bud into this.
Yeah, he had a great time. I spoke with him yesterday.
Okay, well, who else you got? What's another game that interests you?
The Saints are still playing. Their Saints are on the road, but favored by 3 against the Titans. That's a great game. And then playing for the number 1 overall pick, the Dolphins against the Bengals. That's a pick 'em. See, all these games matter.
They have a worse game record than the Giants, these teams?
The Bengals do.
The
Dolphins,
Bengals
I believe,
do.
are tied with the Giants.
Okay.
So, if you're a Giants fan, do you want Daniel Jones to get a win, or do you want to get the better draft pick?
Not a better draft pick.
That's what I say too.
But then again, as a coach, I don't think I would ever coach to lose. I just can't. It's just wrong. I still play. Even in the hockey I play now, old man hockey, I'm not supposed to care. But we'll be losing 5-1 with 30 seconds, and I'll be yelling at the ref to drop the puck with a curse in it. Well, it's almost over. Let the clock drop the effing puck. Just drop the gosh darn thing. Excuse me. It's just how I'm wired. But go ahead.
No, just a great weekend of football.
Well, yes, it is. But see, the important thing, folks, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and we do it at 8 o'clock every Friday, this week's football picks, and they're brought to you by our friends at Dominic Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuentes, Padrons, I'm trying to roll my R's here, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, open 7 days a week. Now, what's interesting, it's the afternoon or late afternoon in Jordan right now, or mid-afternoon. And we welcome our listeners in Jordan. We welcome the other way. Now, people in Calgary are listening, so they're probably listening to the last hour. It's 3 hours behind us. Calgary, welcome as well. Ohio, welcome. Florida, welcome. California, welcome. And
Syracuse, Utica.
Syracuse, Utica. Utica is we got to get you into this honeymooner thing, man. You really got to get into this. It's a whole language. Utica, for example, is the home of Uncle Leo and Aunt Sarah, where Ralph Gramden says, Aunt Sarah will just love to see you. That's the famous episode. Do you know that one? No. Okay. There's a scene in there that you should watch. The one with where Ralph hurts his back bowling. Where Norton takes his temperature but checks the thermometer with a match. It's absolutely hysterical. All righty, you'll hear a lot more from Jake Schaefer tomorrow. Right now, we're going to share the weather with you, and we will be talking with Andy Spano in a couple of minutes. Let's check the weather, and I had it right here. Well, I know what it is. It's 19 degrees, and it's going to get up to 27 today, but that's as good as it's going to get. But we have sunshine all day tonight. It will get back down to like 14 degrees. It's going to feel like zero across most of Westchester. Now, tomorrow, more sunshine. We'll get up to near freezing tomorrow, and then at night again, it'll drop down to about 18. But the good news is, as we get into Saturday, it will warm up. Still more sunshine, though. On Saturday, you can expect sunshine and a little bit of warmth. It'll get up as high as, 38, 39 degrees. Sunday, more sun, getting up to the mid-40s. And the weather is brought to you this morning exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Stay right there. All righty, as we take a look at tomorrow, it's 8:35, and we'll be talking with Andy Spano, our political analyst and former county executive, in just a couple of minutes. Now, tomorrow, Janelle Albritton will be with us. Steve Callis, the sports editor at Janelle's Westchester County Post news outlet. Jake's Picks, of course. Dr. Victor Sternberg and Hezi Harris. Now, today, we'll be taking an early leave today for some maintenance and other issues, so we'll be out at 9 o'clock. But right now, we go to one of our favorite guests, because he can handle all this crazy politics, because he's been there, and still keep his mood even and keep his sense of humor. He's, of course, the former county executive, very fine political analyst, and just a decent soul who we want to wish a happy holiday to. Please welcome Andy Spano. Good morning, Mr. Spano. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, Bob. How are you?
Very well. It's always a pleasure. And before we get rolling into impeachment and everything else, I want to wish you and yours, I know like my family, you have different ethnicities and religions, so a happy Merry Christmas, a happy Hanukkah, and a wonderful holiday season to you, sir.
And the same to you and your listeners.
Right, and thank you for all your contributions to the program. Now, we'll start with the big gorilla in the room. We have an impeachment. What was the benefit to the Democrats of not, say, taking the 10 articles that were in the Mueller report and throwing them in, and a few other bells and whistles that they could have thrown in as much as they know that the president's not going to get removed from office anyway?
Well, in one of my ill-fated runs in 1990, I ran for state comptroller in a primary against Carol Bellamy.
That's right.
And and the governor called me. Governor Cuomo called me and said, "Come on up. I want to talk to you." So I went up to see Governor Cuomo. And they sat down, and he wasn't too enamored with Carol Bellamy. And he said, He said, you got to keep this 3 issues. That's it. Don't go beyond 3 issues because no one, you got to keep it focused on 3 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what this is about. I mean, even with the focus on these 2 articles of impeachment, most people or many people just are not focused on this. They don't know exactly what all this means, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the cacophony of both sides. They don't know who to believe, and that's what they hear more. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
they hear what comes out in the press more than they're hearing what actually is going on. So this is a way of focusing. That's my point. This is a way of focusing.
Well, no, I figured that out.
Simple.
Yeah. Although,
Yeah,
and then we see what comes out. Did you see the front page of the Post today? It was so embarrassed for them.
I didn't see the Post, but I understand that they did a Pelosi front page where everyone else did a Trump impeach front page.
Right. And they called her the swamp mistress. And I know that appeals.
The
swamp mistress, yeah.
Well, I should let everybody know that draining the swamps is not a good idea.
Why is that?
Well, draining swamps cause all kinds of problems with the environment. It's a poor term to use.
Okay, so where do we go from here? And why do you think not one Republican went the other way?
They're afraid. This is very simple. This is a simple thing for Republicans. And they got no, the Italian word is guglions.
Cojones. Go ahead. I wish you could see me on TV. I have my Santa hat on.
Look at the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I think this is stark. All of those people, or 99% of them, who are in swing districts or red districts, voted for impeachment. They didn't care. They thought this was serious enough. They don't care if they lose their seats. None of the Republicans feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is that? Why are they so enamored with this job that they can't do what should be done? And let me tell you something. Forget about what should be done. That's my opinion. I think these are legitimate situations. If you don't think they're legitimate, why screw up the process? Go through the process, say these don't rise to the level of impeachment, and exonerate them.
But Mr. Spano, former county executive Andy Spano, with us here on Radio Westchester. But have we not gotten to the point where the political process is now bigger than what the objective of gaining power was? In other words, they're doing this because it works. And as a member of the political class, you've run for office, you've won most of the time, 99% of the time, I guess 80.
No, 50% of the time.
Oh, I thought you only lost 2 races. Well, I'm glad.
No, I ran 13 times, and I lost 6.
That dog catcher race. That dog catcher race was a sorry, I just had to go there. Okay, so you're 50-50. That even makes you more qualified.
Well, it's a little less, but because I don't want to think that I don't know math.
I have this out with Jeannie Zaino all the time, and she's a terrific guest, as you know. But still, one of the things that even she defaults to as a political scientist, when someone tells some outright lie, she just, well, that's politics. And that's my point. I'm struggling to find the words.
I told you I never told an outright lie.
No, I believe you.
And I'm telling you that most politicians don't tell outright lies.
This
politicians that get reported, they tell outright lies.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying is that politicians do what works. I mean, one of my sports guy was asking me before why I don't watch the debates, because they don't say anything meaningful, because they feel they can't. And then I just read the summaries at the end of the day. I like the debates Trump was in because the characters on the stage then were so different in every way. It was a lot of fun. I mean, from Nico to the most hated guy in the Senate, Ted Cruz, to the guy I thought should have won, Kasich, but looked like a shop teacher. That was fun. But the Democrats are just like an amorphous mess, and they're not saying anything meaningful yet. But having said that, are not the Republicans? I always imagine them sitting back and saying, "Well, this is the job. This is what it is. This is what we're supposed to do," and forget why they're really there. How much of what I'm saying is true?
We've never had a situation like this. It started with Nixon and Ailes back before the impeachment, he left office, where they actually sat down and with staff and talked about starting their own, station, so that they can have something that fights back against what they thought was a press that was not favorable to them. Now, Nixon didn't get a chance to do it, but certainly Ailes got a chance to finally put it together. So you've got the things like the New York Post and Fox News, which Nixon never had. I mean, to the way Trump has it today. So Trump has his own national PR firm. And he had the National Enquirer, and other little papers around the country. And then you have MSNBC, CNBC, and so on. In the old days, what you had was ABC, CBS, NBC. You had guys come on at night with the evening news or the morning news, and then they go off. It wasn't this full-blown thing every day, 24 hours that you have today. And it has made a difference. It's polarized the entire nation because, and it isn't Trump so much and the Democrats who have polarized it. What's polarized it is the way the communication gets out. If you just watch Fox News and that's all, and read the Post, you are in a different world.
A totally different world. Although the Post has the best sports section.
I'm not leaving the Democrats out, the liberal press out of this either. I mean, if you're on the other side, and if you listen to NPR, which they also call liberal, which I don't think is, I think tries to be as fairer than most, they're boring.
Oh, boy. I make fun of them all the time. Every once in a while when Jeannie Zaino comes on, I play like some obscure jazz piece, and I say, "Hi, and now we're going to talk with Jeannie Zaino, the professor of political." That's my NPR invitation, but yeah. Well, they do have it. I do believe they're skewed to that their individual hosts may treat the. See, here's how I explain today to my listeners the difference between the liberal bias and the conservative bias. The liberals take a fact and build a false premise upon it. Like stop and frisk only targets black people, but if that's where the crime is, that's what you do. But it's a fact, but they skew it. Whereas the right wing press creates whole new narratives. So like Hillary Clinton killed Vince Foster.
Absolutely. Well, you can see that with the border problem. With immigration.
Yeah.
Immigration is a very big problem in the United States, but not the way they're talking about it. And you can talk about China. I actually like what he's doing with China.
Me too.
He's not going far enough. He backed off too fast. And I admire the fact that he's trying to, subsidize the farmers. But most of that money is not going to small farmers. It's going to, the big farming cooperatives and companies. So it's the way he carries out this stuff. I don't think the guy ever read the Constitution. And it's a very small document. They take you less than an hour to read it.
Yep.
But it says so many things that this guy doesn't seem to have any kind of
well, you know
perspective
what?
on.
There's a really basic thing, and your reaction to this. When a man or a woman, for that matter, and there's a wonderful piece in Business Week about women CEOs becoming as sociopathic, and it's not because they're women; it's the job, as any other CEO. But right now it's men. Men that come out of industry are used to getting done what they want because they want it. And it's always, and I was mentioning before, with Don Regan, who worked for President Reagan. It's very hard for them to realize that politics ain't business, that you have to use this system of ours that the flag represents, and it's very inefficient. It's deliberately slow. It's slow. It's muddled. It deals with conflicting interests and requires compromise. Where I cut this president some slack is I don't think he was at all prepared for that. And what I think the American people don't appreciate is that perhaps is that yes, you will get more efficiency and maybe more things done with someone who's authoritative, but that's not our system. You want another system then, you know?
Well, but it's a fallacy to believe that business is more productive and efficient than government.
Well, no,
it's a fallacy.
Well,
you've been in it. You go to PepsiCo, they put out that they market this, they market that, they market this. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
No. Allow me to change. Allow me to adapt what I said. What you ask for happens, and it happens quickly. It still may be inefficient and bad, and that's my point.
True.
Yeah,
absolutely true.
And if you
when you speak, and you're a politician, when you speak, if you know what's going on, you know your words start traveling. Mm-hmm. They're traveling through the legislators, both parties who start talking about it. You know, they travel through the media. You know, all kinds of radio, television, social media, etc., and they just start getting changed and so on. And you know, so all of a sudden you've got to figure out with all those impediments in between you and what you're trying to tell the people, how does it get directly to them? How do they hear it? And when they hear it, do they understand it? Because there's a dependency when you explain a complicated issue that you hope the press helps you explain at least the details of it correctly so that they can make up their mind in a way that they understand. This is not easy.
No, it's not at all. And disinformation is easy, and all sides do it, and all sides will go after anything. And I guess you have to be ready for it. You know, I texted you offline last week. I admit to sometimes the rhetoric in the country does get to me. It really does. And for someone who does what I do, that's a bad thing to happen after years of doing this. How do you keep an even keel when you're in it?
Oh, you know, it's very frustrating when you're in, but you understand it. This isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, the Fox News thing and so on is relatively new, but if you go back to our founding fathers in the early days of this country, you had the Democrat Chronicle. You know, yeah. It was really a pro-democratic paper.
Yeah. Well, I remember they called Lincoln a gorilla. They called him a long-armed gorilla, a brute. I mean, they said terrible things about him.
Oh, man, the stories they made up about, the Adams. And well, they didn't make them up about Jefferson. Because they really happened. But, I mean, they published them very vividly and graphically. You know what I mean? So and that was the main source of, mass media at that time. So I mean, this isn't. Everyone has had to deal with this. Even Benjamin Franklin. That's an interesting story.
Boy,
Franklin had his own newspaper, right?
I know he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and it used to bother him that he had to print what other people said that he knew were lies.
Yes.
And it just bothered him, but it was news, right? I mean, this guy said X or Y or so on and so forth. So one day. He went out, and because he was concerned, that at some point he might lose the paper if people didn't read it or didn't correct. So he wanted to see how he would be affected if he didn't have too much stuff, too many resources to live. So he went out and he bought like a loaf of, but not a loaf of bread, but some sort of bread object, and he took it home. And he got himself a glass of water, and he took the bread, and he ate the pieces of bread, and he stored some of it, and he drank the water. And when he went to sleep on the floor with a blanket or something to cover him. And he woke up the next day, and he did that for not a long time, but he did it for a little while. And he got up and he said, "I can live this way if things get bad, and then he went back and he felt comfortable doing his work.
I've done things similar since I went into business for myself. 8:52. I'm beginning to look longingly at government cheese. My guest is former county executive, now political analyst, Andy Spano. By the way, did you read the book? Really good book about he and his son, Benjamin Franklin, and his son. You know, his son was.
Well, I know he had a bastard son.
Well, this was the son, but he was illegitimate, but they were very close for many, many years, but his son remained a loyalist. And
yes, he was, I think, governor of New Jersey.
Yes, and then he was, I think, governor as well of Pennsylvania. It's what they redivided up. I forget now. I read the book a while back, a couple of years ago. But the thing is
that's what's happening today, Bob.
Yeah. And
I've never seen that happen. I mean, you know, if I knew George Will personally, he'd be one of my best buddies now.
Yeah.
And philosophically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though philosophically, because he's the kind of conservative we're used to. You know, Bill Buckley. You know, people like that who you disagreed with sometimes vehemently on a philosophical base. And then went out and had a few drinks.
Well, why? You know, I know why it's gotten so, but from a philosophical point of view, one of the things that conservatives represented was fiscal responsibility. That doesn't even come up anymore.
No, and that's the danger here. This is a pragmatic government, and the pragmatism isn't, you know, just getting something done. The pragmatism is staying in power and staying in office.
Well, that's what I was getting at
before.
before.
Not great objectives.
that pragmatism and that cynicism runs the political system today. Like I say, every time someone says that's politics, and one of my guests, I'll say, wait. What you're saying is that the American people aren't smart enough, so politics means that we have to deceive them. I mean, it's gotten to the point because of the internet where it really is hard to separate the truth out. I mean, it's hard for even what I do. You know, I'll do a story and I'll research it as best I can and then find out, like with the FISA warrants. The FISA warrants there was no bias in it, but certainly there was. They took shortcuts. They were sloppy. And they did it with a certain vigorousness, you know. And the analogy I used, the best movie about John Gotti was the one with Armand Assante, not the one that Travolta did for the movies. It was an HBO, the HBO one. But there's a great line in it. It was after Gotti was acquitted for the second or third time, and the chief of that bureau says, "I want to get this guy." And I'm sure that every prosecutor worth his salt who believes in what they're doing says that. And so I'm sure,
I understand.
So that the prosecutors going after the president probably felt the same way. But man, when you're dealing in politics, you can't do that. You can't be heard to say that. It's an interesting slippery slope.
Well, you know, and it's also interesting when they say things are polarized.
Yes,
that's the way it may look. I'll give you a hypothetical situation where I'm willing to compromise on a particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's almost the NRA position that they voice. If they give an inch, they'll take an arm.
Yeah, the old slippery slope dynamic.
That's how you get polarized.
Mm-hmm.
You get polarized that way. So I'm out there on abortion. I'm a pro-choice person, and I got this anti-life person. So they say, you know, this is wrong, never, I don't care if they're raped, pillaged, or whatever.
No, that's absurd.
And I may be a strong advocate of a different way of handling the third trimester.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm reluctant to present that in the light of what I see on the other side.
Of course, and everybody.
So I stay all the way over. I don't come back in. Now, then you say we're polarized, but we're really not. One side is polarized. And it's causing the other side not to move.
And it depends on the issue, because
that's correct.
Yeah, and it does depend on the issue, and we see it in education now, where it's got to be either or rather than common sense.
Well, they're going to education. Education is due to the biggest disruption you ever heard in the next, I think, less than 5 years.
In what way? Please elaborate.
Every in the way you get educated, in the way you pay for education, and all that stuff. It's ready to crumble. It'll start at the college level.
Do you think everybody needs to go to college?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, neither do I.
Absolutely, I don't think. Listen, everyone should get educated. Now, people have taken education and tied it to schools. And that's the problem right now. They got to get schools out of their head, and they had to come to learning. They had to come into the concept of learning. How can we learn? Some of it will be with schools, in different schools. But this will happen. This is going to happen. It's going to morph into it because there's too much going on right now. Do you know that there are people now don't want to go to college?
Yeah, and I could see why they wouldn't. Well, I had someone call
They don't want to go.
Yeah, I had someone call the other day and say they think a liberal arts education is worthless, which it is not. It's not. It doesn't necessarily give you a set of skills, but it certainly teaches you how to think critically.
Well, now people say that because what are you learning? You're learning this and about literature and arts and things like that. I think most companies today would prefer that and teach that. I think that you're going to see a lot of education for the specific content going on in corporations and other places. Well, remember, think of what most teachers do. They get involved with content, history, science, et cetera, et cetera. Content is all over the place now.
Yeah, it really is.
That's not the problem. You can get content anywhere.
The problem is teaching people how to think and then how to do a job. I made a good bulk of my career before I started doing communications work. I ran the training school for my company. And we got people out of college that were ill-prepared for the job per se, and we had to train them. But what would trouble me most as an educator on that level was when we got someone who couldn't write, someone who couldn't think outside of what they were told to do. And so a good deal of our training was dedicated to that. And we had to do far too much management training. Someone would come out of college with an MBA and they could understand a balance sheet back and forth, but they couldn't manage human beings. And we'd have to hire.
Yeah, but that, look, there are certain skills. There are certain things people do that are arts.
Yes.
Not science.
Yes.
Like teaching. Teaching is an art.
Yep.
It's not a science.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're getting so analytical and we're saying it goes against the grain. You wouldn't do that with Picasso.
Nope.
Or Michelangelo.
Mm-mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
They didn't go to college.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Before you go, let's take a look at this. Now, the president's not going to be removed from office. How do you think this is going to affect the 2020 elections?
Well, there are a couple of wild cards here. The game ain't over yet. That's,
oh no,
Yogi's old saying, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you've got Pelosi looking at holding back these articles of impeachment because she wants to see that we have a fair trial. Okay, that's right. One. Every calling of witness, how the trial is set, and so on, requires 51 votes in the Senate. If you get 4 senators to peel off, he's not going to be able to control how this trial is run. Remember, everyone's focusing on the impeachment itself, the conviction itself, which requires, 2/3 vote. But it's only a majority vote in how it's conducted. So that's a wild card right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how it's conducted, you start getting, other people testifying and bringing other information in. All of a sudden, the world starts to change. So I wouldn't throw anything out right now. Wait to see. This is going to be one of the most interesting times in history of this country.
It sure is. Although a lot of people weren't watching any of the impeachment hearings either, they didn't know what to believe. But you think they'll watch the actual trial in the Senate?
It depends on how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just a show trial, they probably won't watch it. But if it's got some drama about it,
If they get
no one-
Bolton or someone like that to testify, everybody will be glued to their TV
and not only
sets.
that, the Senate isn't the House. They're not going to be yelling and screaming like the House does. It's this more staid group.
Yeah,
You know, and people that if a fair trial is conducted without yelling and screaming to get at the issue, you'll see people watching. Plus, as the campaign gets closer, you'll see people watching. I mean, even on campaigns, no one's paying any attention until after September, after Labor Day.
Yeah, and then we'll see.
You and I do, and the papers do, but I never worried about anything before, and I never worry about smart people, intellectuals, and so on. Never worry about them. They always search out your issue. So you never worry about that.
It's the rest of us.
The
you gotta
average
worry
guy
about.
who's got other problems. He's got to feed his family. He's got to, and all he sees is the edges of what's going on, and he makes his decision on those edges till it gets closer, and maybe he's focused a little more.
Okay, one more
I could
item.
always get a volunteer in the last week of your campaign because they know they don't have to work the next week.
Well, that's true. Hey, one more very quickly before you go. We're in our final moments with Andy Spano, former county executive political analyst. There was a piece in the paper today that yet more Republicans in the state Senate are deciding not to run. What is the Republican Party now locally? It's a different animal than nationally. What can they do to get more stability and an honorable opposition here in New York State? I mean, the cities, Republican. We have a guy here, Al Tarantino, whom you may know, is like as rare as hen's teeth. He's the one Republican in city government. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I know, but what goes around comes around. I mean, eventually something will come back, whether it's the Republican Party, but some opposition will come back. Now, once you get all Democrats or all Republicans, what happens is they begin to splinter in their own factions. You saw that almost happening in Congress, and they move off, either form a section of the party or even form another party. I mean, that's the way the Republicans started under Lincoln.
Yeah, we tend to forget
before Lincoln,
that the Democrats were the racists back in the day.
Yeah, this is a new world. Everything is being disrupted. You don't know if that two-party system that the way it is doesn't get disrupted also.
Well, Andy Spano,
I used to tell the legislators, look, what are you here for? You're here to express the wishes of your constituencies. I don't need you anymore. I can go on the internet. Do it.
This is true. Andy Spano, thank you very much once again. Have a wonderful holiday, you and yours, and we will keep in touch. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, Bob. Same to you and your family, and to all your listeners.
Thank you very much, Andy Spano, everyone. All right, as we said, we're going to take an early leave today. No 9 o'clock guest. We're going to take care of other business. We have people to thank, of course, Andy Spano, John Bailey, Tom for all his time this morning, Jake's picks, our letter writers. Jake, tomorrow, don't forget tomorrow at 8 o'clock, Jake will be with us and his picks of the week. You can either get rich or go to the poorhouse if he continues to lose. We shall see. And you never know, he could come in with more letters as well. Tomorrow we'll talk with Steve Callis. Well, actually, he and Jake will try together to make you rich. Dr. Victor Sternberg's with us tomorrow, Janelle Albritton, Vince, and we'll try and get some calls in as well. Our last look at the weather, and the weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It's up to, 16. It dropped down. It always gets colder before it gets... Pardon? It's cold in here. Yeah, well, I wore this thermal item today. It will be cold tonight, getting down into the teens again, but this sunshine that you see today will last all day and into tomorrow. It'll warm up just a little bit. It'll get up to maybe freezing. during the day and at night in the low 20s, and then on into Saturday, still more sunshine. And it may actually get up to 42 at some point in the day. We want to thank our other sponsors, Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Khan, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and, of course, Dominic's Cigars. Again, tomorrow, Dominic's Fine Cigars will bring you Jake's football picks of the week, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Patrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. And now tomorrow, we'll be shortening up our 9 o'clock hour tomorrow, only because one of our dedicated listeners is doing a very special show near and dear to him elsewhere, and we're going to respect that a little bit and give him some room. So anyway, this is Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. The program is Mornings with Bob Marrone. Thank you so much. Remember, you could listen on RadioWestchester.com, MyTuner Radio. You can watch and listen and look at me look like an idiot like this on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, and more. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.